Right, hello everyone. Hello. Great to be here. Stanstead Abbotts, never heard of it before now. So, my name's Davey and I am the founder of Peace Officers UK and co-director along with She-Bear of Peace Officers UK CIC, which is a community interest company. Now, I want to start, I'll get to why we're a community interest company, but I want to start with telling you where Peace Officers UK started and why. So back in 2020, we had some little event going on around the world, apparently. I don't know, I was indoors most of the time, but my wife Jess would go to all the protests throughout 2020, the anti-lockdown protests, and through to 2021. I would stay at home with the kids on the Saturday, but I would watch, obviously looking out for her on all the YouTube streamers, Resistance GB, etc. And occasionally I'd see her, but what I'd mainly see is the antics of the police at these protests, which I was quite disgusted, not just disgusted, but proper furious. I was furious with the way they dealt with what was essentially a peaceful protest. And of course, any action that kicked off, guaranteed first people on the scene would be the streamers, the YouTube streamers. So I would see all of that. And when my wife would come home, she'd be telling me, oh, it was great. Oh, it was brilliant. I had a great time. There were so many people, met so many people. And I'd be sitting there steaming. Not at her, obviously, but at the actions of the police from what I'd witnessed. And so in the spring, I think it was March 2021, she'd just come back. We were having a conversation about the event. And I was saying to her what I'd seen of the actions of the police. I've never been a big fan of the police, to be fair. But what I'd seen of their actions, I said, it was disgusting. I said, they wouldn't carry on like that. I said, if everybody was dressed the same as them. I said, it's only because they can see each other and spot each other in a massive crowd of, 1 million people, that they can behave that way, charge into a crowd, circle round a particular person because they wanted to take them out. Even though they'd done nothing wrong, they hadn't been violent or anything like that. They were just, generally, they would have a loud hailer. And, they obviously wanted to take out the loudest people there. And as I said to Jess, I said, if everybody dressed just like them, or very similar to them, right? I said, a bit like they did in France with the Gilets jaunes, the yellow vest protests, where everybody was dressed in yellow vests, so much so that the police over there had to change the colour of their vests. So that they could try and distinguish themselves from the rest of the crowds. And then it was like a light bulb went off, because she kept saying to me every time she'd come back, I'd say to her, you're wasting your time. There's no way these people, first of all, they're not in Parliament on a Saturday. I said, and they're just going to ignore you anyway. I said, and what infuriates me probably the most is these people are chanting for freedom, whilst being herded like cattle through the streets on a pre-planned route. So she kept saying to me, you've got to come, feel the energy. She said, so when I'd say to her, I saw, the police, they did this, and she said, I saw none of that. She said, I saw none of that. She said, where I was, everybody was brilliant. There was no kick-offs by police or anything. So she said, you've got to come along. And I said, all right, I'll tell you what then. I said, I'll do your deal. I'll come along. We'll get a babysitter. I said, I'll come along, but only if we dress like them. Yeah? If I get some yellow vests and hats and stuff, but instead of police, we had peace. So she agreed, reluctantly, agreed, because Jess doesn't like to be centre of attention, whereas I do, according to her. So she agreed just to get me to go along. And I have to say, she was absolutely right. She was spot on. The energy, the connection, it didn't matter that we were being herded around like cattle. It only mattered that we had that connection with like-minded people, right? So the next protest, I had another couple. I had my brother and my best mate, who also decided to dress up as peace officers. And so Peace Officers UK was born. Now, later that year, me and Jess at a protest in Crawley got arrested for impersonating police, which was ridiculous because we didn't have police written on us at all. We had peace. And there was quite significant differences. We didn't tell people we were police. So we were arrested and had to go to court. But that changed the direction then, because the protest started dying down at that point, sort of the end of summer 2021. And due to us being arrested, I started getting invited onto podcasts to be interviewed. And so I would then start speaking about the system and how it actually works and how you can beat the system. You know, the simple ways often that you can beat the system. And so then I started traveling all around the country doing talks. I think my longest one was 5 hours, so strap in. But I was doing talks all around the country, teaching people about how to defend themselves against enforcement agents and police. So the beginning of last year, of 2024, in January, my good friend Rob the rat catcher, he said to me, Davey, he said, you need to expand this, because by this point it was just me, because my wife had kind of dropped out and, you know, was doing her thing and whatever, and I carried on with the peace officers. So it was just me traveling around, and I would give phone support to people who needed advice, and I'd provide them with templates. I'd teach about issuing promissory notes, and as I say, generally how to defend yourself against all these corrupt corporations, especially the council. So he said to me, you need to expand this. I'm having lots of people come to me saying, how do I join peace officers? Because he said he wants to join peace officers. He said, they're asking me, how do I join peace officers? And I said, all right, then we'll expand it. We'll start signing up peace officers. And then just shortly after that, I was introduced to She-Bear, who has been an absolute godsend to the organisation. It wouldn't be where it is today if it wasn't for her. And in August last year, 3rd of August, the CIC, Community Interest Company, was incorporated. Now, why did we incorporate it? Simple. You see, our job, our duty, what we do is not just to give people advice, but when needed, turn up to somebody's home to act as an agent on behalf of the householder, so that we can then civil trespass the enforcement agents and bailiffs and police, right? So that's what we do. That's what our organisation is all about. We're looking to obviously sign up. I think we've got about 100 currently signed up at the moment, but we're looking to get into the thousands and eventually the tens of thousands all over the UK. We've also got Peace Officers Belgium, somebody in Belgium running Peace Officers Belgium. There's an affiliate of Peace Officers UK, Peace Officers Netherlands, Peace Officers Luxembourg, Peace Officers Sweden. So we are expanding quite rapidly, but obviously we do need to increase the numbers. So why a CIC? Why register in this corrupt system as a corporation? Well, it's simple in my mind, because if we was to turn up to somebody's home, just as an average Joe Blogs, then we're a busybody interfering. But when we're a corporation, that's very different, you see. Now we're on a very level playing field with the enforcement agents, because they too are a corporation, right? So when we turn up and police are present, right, the police have to look at it now, rather than this is a corporation versus a layperson, it's now a corporation versus a corporation. And I come armed with a lot of knowledge, right? I can quote their police oath off by heart. Took me about an hour to learn it, committed to memory. I do solemnly and sincerely declare and affirm that I will well and duly serve the King in the office of Constable with fairness, integrity, diligence and impartiality, upholding fundamental human rights and according equal respect to all people, and that I will, to the best of my power, cause the peace to be kept and preserved and prevent all offences against people and property, and that while I continue to hold the said office, I will, to the best of my skill and knowledge, discharge all the duties thereof faithfully according to law. So that's the police oath, right? Not a single police officer in this country knows the police oath. Why? Because they didn't have to learn it. They just had to read it once off a piece of paper when they were awarded their warrant card. Now, the thing about the police oath, and the important thing about learning it and committing it to memory if you're able, or at least having it written down somewhere, a printout so you could read it out to them, is that all your protections are in there. Yeah, it changed, I think, 2018, 2019, something like that, where we used to be known as subjects of the Crown, right? The Crown and its subjects. But now we are the people, and it says in there about protecting fundamental human rights. Now, I can use that against a police officer very easily, because I could say to the officer, can you identify yourself? And quite often, these officers, obviously they've all got egos, and their egos get the better of their professionalism. And so they'll just go, it's on there, right? It's on there, the number. Well, what's your name? Don't have to tell you that, it's on there, right? That's what you get from quite a lot of them, yeah? It depends how you start the conversation with them. If you come across with a kind of angry or patronising demeanour towards them, that's what's going to get their heckles up. That's what's going to spark the ego. And then they don't want to play ball with you, right? But when they do that, right, they're committing an offence, yeah? Because in the oath, it states, according equal respect to all people. Now, they wouldn't identify that way to their superior officer or to a member of a court. If they were asked to identify themselves, they would identify themselves correctly, right? Their name, their number, the station in which they're stationed, right? 3 points of identification. So you can pull them up on that, right? And state to them that you're breaking your oath. It states in there, according equal respect to all people, you must treat all people the same, regardless of who they are, whether they're your boss or whether they are a higher authority than your boss, i.e. a judge or a justice of the peace, right? So they're breaking their oath. Now, quite often the police will turn up, especially, it's normally when it comes to people who have changed their meters, energy meters, and they turn up in force with engineers, enforcement agents, and police officers. Now, that's a civil matter, so the police can't get involved, right? Section 26, Criminal Justice and Courts Act 2015. Now, Section 26, it's quite clear. Subsection 4 of that Act states, and I quote, a police constable exercises the powers and privileges of a constable improperly if the exercise of a power or privilege is for the purpose of achieving a benefit to the officer or a benefit or detriment for another person, and that a reasonable person would not expect the power or privilege to be exercised for the purpose of achieving that benefit or detriment. That's the exact wording of Section 26, subsection 4, right? It's an offence that complements the already existing offence of misconduct in public office and carries a sentence upon conviction of up to 14 years imprisonment or an unlimited fine or both, right? Now, if you can quote that to a police officer, what do you think is going to go through his head? Is he going to think, this person doesn't know what the hell they're talking about, I can treat them any way I want? Or is he going to think, if they know that, what else do they know? Yeah, because I don't know that. I know of Section 26, but I couldn't quote it. I know I took an oath, but I don't know what it was. Yeah, so now you're empowered with knowledge, and you come across, and when you're dealing with these people, you have to think of it like a set of scales, right? Weighing confidence. The more confident you are, the less confident they are. The more confident they are, the less confident you are, right? When you get to a balance of you are up here and they are down here, confidence-wise, because of their lack of knowledge, that again, it's their egos. They don't want to make fools of themselves. They don't want to come across looking stupid. They don't want to get it wrong. Yeah. If they know you're clueless, then they can say anything they want and carry on any way they want. And the chances are, you know, you'll write a letter to somebody, you know, which most people don't bother. Yeah, it's usually an empty threat. Yeah, or we'll complain about you or whatever. And they're just like, yeah, whatever. The IOPC have got my back. Essentially, that's what they're there for, to give you the perception that you've got the ability to complain, when actually it's just a department for reasonable excuses for their behavior, for their poor behavior, right? So, you need to be armed with knowledge. That's what you need. Yeah. Now, you can download from the Peace Officers UK website. It's just peaceofficers.uk. Go on to resources and you will find a document called Section 26, Criminal Justice and Courts Act 2015. All right. It's the entire act printed out, all the subsections. And underneath at the bottom section, it's got the police oath, right? Now, if you're going to commit it to memory, the only real bit you need to commit to memory of Section 26 is the bit I quoted, subsection 4, because that's the body of the actual offence itself, okay, as to defining what is an offence and what isn't under Section 26. So you can download that for free and learn it like you're learning song lyrics or something, and be able to quote it to them, right? As I say, you'll destroy their confidence. It'll be down there. And when these people, their confidence is down there, what they want to do is edge off that way, scurry away like the rats they are, okay? So knowledge is the key to your power. Yeah, knowledge, just committing things to memory, being able to quote them. Now, everyone's got different situations, different problems, different issues, different legal fights, etc. So my advice would be to utilize something like ChatGPT, for example. Oh no, that nasty AI. Yeah, it is nasty. Yeah, and I totally understand why a lot of people are I don't want to be getting into that, But the way I think of ChatGPT is the same way I think of social media and the internet. They were created to control us, right? They were created to use as a weapon against us, right? That's the only reason for social media is data harvesting. They want to know what you're doing, where you're going, when you went there, what you had for dinner, because you'll tell them, you know, you'll even show pictures of your dinner plate, you know. So it's a way of gaining information that they didn't have before from you. But the thing about a weapon, right, a bit like a gun, yeah, before guns were around, nobody was getting shot. But as soon as they created guns, now I have access to guns that I can point at them. So you have to think of ChatGPT the same way with anything and everything in life, in society, in life as a whole. Everything has a pro and a con to it, okay? It's the first law of physics. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction, right? That which you create to use against them can be used against you. So I advise you to use it because it's a valuable resource. Either that, or you could spend, I don't know, 5-7 years studying law and getting a law degree and whatever. Or you can just ask ChatGPT to write you a statement in a court format to defend against a case of blah, 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 include all legislation, include all case law, and it will find it all for you and put it in a format. And then it will say, do you want me to put that in a PDF for you? Do you want to upload evidence and I'll collate it together? Yes. You just say yes. I generally say yes, please, because otherwise we're teaching AI to be rude, aren't we? If we just say yes, no. Yeah. So I always say yes, please. Yeah. To teach it, to be polite. So, and it will produce everything for me. I didn't have to get a law degree to know how to structure it. It knows how to structure it. Now, I've got an invaluable weapon I can use against them that they can't, you know, and it will find information that I haven't even looked up yet. Yeah. Or even know about case laws I don't even know about yet. Yeah, but then it will show me, and then I will, because of the way my brain is structured, I have to go delve into it, jump down rabbit holes, find out what's in there, find out what it's all about, why, how it can be used, all of that. I'll pick it to pieces. So use it as a valuable tool. Yeah, you don't have to give it all the personal information if you don't want to. You can ask it to create you a template. And it will just tell you to fill, you know, cut and paste and fill in the relevant information where they're in square brackets. It'll tell you to put your name there, your address there, the account number there. So you don't have to give it personal information if you don't want to, if you're worried about what AI will do with that personal information. But it is a valuable weapon for us to use against them, because now we can fight court cases. Yeah, we can put together evidence bundles, entire bundles. I've done it. There's a case I'm helping with that is coming up to do with council tax, a bankruptcy petition from the council based on a liability order for council tax. It was awarded, and now it's the end of next week. I'll be in the Royal Court of Justice in London, helping with this case. But it looks like, according to the judge at the pre-trial hearing, he said he looked at the submissions and he said that, you know, this lady's got a very good chance of winning. He believes that's why it would go ahead. You know, if he believed that she didn't have a good chance of winning, he wouldn't have allowed the case to go ahead. It would have stopped at that point. But he declared that you have a very good chance of winning. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be setting some case law at the end of next week, which will completely destroy council tax, and that everybody can use to quote, because the council have already So what happened was in April of this year, the bankruptcy petition was submitted to or was heard at the county court. It was granted, and then it was appealed, and the appeal was on the basis of the liability order and its lack of existence. And so the appeal gave an order that said your appeal is rejected. However, on the grounds that paragraph 2 is satisfied, which was an order for the council within 28 days to produce an office copy of the liability order. Now, the council responded just before the 28 days was up by trying to appeal paragraph 2. So appealing the paragraph within the appeal, it was quite mad. Appealing paragraph 2 on the grounds that they haven't got an office copy of a liability order. They've said it in black and white. We haven't got one of those. Can we instead produce a person who will give a statement to say one exists? Bit odd. So somebody is going to commit perjury to say it exists, but they can't produce it according to them because it doesn't exist. So it's a bit of an odd one. Next week will be an interesting day.
Sorry, can I ask you a question?
Yes, please do.
So I've heard quite a bit about liability orders as to whether they're a thing or not.
Yeah.
And is this case essentially going to establish whether a liability order is just something that the council have constructed off their own back,
So,
or a real thing that a court has really properly issued? Is that the thrust of your argument? Is that basically this is a falsification, essentially? Yeah,
the thrust of the argument is there's a few points, right? One of them is it's not noted on any register of judgments, right? So it's every one of the CPR rules is that every order that's given has to be noted, right, with the court. So everything has to be recorded with the court. But these council tax liability orders are not recorded, and that's because they were actually scrapped on the 1st of October 2003. Okay, July, I think it was 2003 in Wales, and the 1st of October 2003 in England. Right, so they were scrapped as an instrument for the court to declare. So what happens is the court will use the magistrates' court as a venue, and they do that intentionally to make you believe that you're being summoned to court for a criminal offence.
Right, they're just hiring a room, right?
They are. We've had this confirmed, because I always get people to ring the court, ask them the questions, but record the conversation and then transcribe it.
Right.
So that's what they've done.
And the registrar or whoever, the court officer, says, "Oh, is this to do with council tax?" And then they know what's going on, because they know that actually it's not.
Well, we've got them on
business.
We've got them on record
in that location.
Yeah, we've got them on record, the magistrates' court, saying that we're just a venue for the council. We're just a venue. Now, anybody can hire a court. You can do it. If you wanted to make a video about courts, or you were making a little film and you needed a courtroom for a courtroom scene, you can hire the court for the day. You can hire a courtroom for a day. You could hire the building, a section of the building.
You could have a drinks party, perhaps.
Yeah, probably. But, so all they're doing is hiring the venue. Yeah. And it's not legitimately done by a court. Because of the numbers of people that they summon to court. Now, this is another point that's being raised in the Royal Court of Justice, and that is who issued the summons. Because it wasn't issued by the Magistrates' Court. We have that on record, that the magistrate said, no, we don't issue summonses for liability orders, you'll need to speak to the council, right? Now, the council don't have a right to issue summonses. They can serve summonses. Anybody can serve a summons, but they don't, only members of the court and certain appointed authorised persons within the court system can issue court summonses, right?
So again, this is the council creating a summons, what they call a summons.
Yeah.
But it isn't really a summons.
And you know it's been created by the council just by the fact halfway down the page somewhere will say, if you intend to appear at court, right, you must first call the council. What court in the land says you must call to ask permission to come to court? If you've been summoned to court, you've been summoned to court. Yeah. Simple as that. You don't have to ask anybody's permission or inform anybody. You just have to turn up to court on the day.
Because it's happening, right?
Because it's happening, exactly.
Also, business of the day at the court.
Now, I've actually sat in one of these court things where they issue these bulk liability orders, and it was last summer.
Portsmouth?
No, it was
Doing it in Portsmouth.
Yeah, they're doing it. They're doing it everywhere. Right. But I actually sat. Portsmouth had they sent out 6,012 summonses for 2:00 on that particular Wednesday. 6,012 people were expected to turn up to court. Yeah. Now, any courtroom you look at will only summon a maximum of 6 people per courtroom. So if they've got 3 courtrooms, then that's 18 people maximum. That was not 6,000. You couldn't get 6,012 people in Portsmouth Magistrates Court. They wouldn't fit in the building, So that's fake. It's fake because it says on it, if you intend to, then you must contact the council first. And it's like, well, hang on, that's a bit sus. That's not legit, right? So this, yeah? So all you have to do now is prove it in a court, yeah? And this is the problem. You see, a lot of people have lost their homes because as soon as the amount, if they own the property, as soon as the amount goes over £5,000, the council can then petition for bankruptcy, right? But the people, as I say, they don't have the knowledge of what questions to ask and what to be brought up in a hearing, right? In a court hearing. Now, that's an interesting term, hearing, because that's what it's known as, a hearing. And that's the thing about the language they use, the language of legalese. It's the language of hearing, right? Of how it's heard. So you could go into a courtroom, for example, and you could say, I do not consent to that contract, right? But how it can be heard is very different. If you break it down, I can either be the letter I, meaning me, yeah, or it could be AYE, meaning yes, yeah. Do could be heard in a hearing as due, meaning owe, DUE, meaning to owe something. So already you've said yes, I owe, right? Not can be spelt with a K, meaning to bind, meaning I'm bound by, right? So yes, I owe and I'm bound by is what you're saying. And consent relates to the sentient being, you as a sentient being, right? So I do not consent can be heard in a hearing as, yes, I do owe that money and I'm bound by it. See what I mean? That's the thing about legalese. And that's how the language works. That's why it's called a hearing. Okay? Because you can hear it anywhere. And that's why when you read legalese, right, or legislation, whatever, right, it's written out very confusing. It's like, why is it over, going over that and then re-explaining it in a slightly different way? It's to make sure it's only heard in a very particular manner, right? So it can't be misheard, right? So that's what a hearing essentially is. And so if you don't bring up something in a hearing, it doesn't get heard. And if it doesn't get heard, it doesn't get considered. Okay, it won't be considered because it hasn't been heard, even if the judge knows that that particular legislation exists that should dismiss the case in your favour, right? Unless you say it, he's not going to consider it. Okay, and in most of these cases, people, through no fault of their own, it's just lack of knowledge, right? They don't ask the question in the court, getting the other side, the claimant, to say who created, because don't forget they're under oath as well. Everyone's got to play by the same rules, right? Who issued the summons? Was it issued by the magistrate's court? And if they say yes, by that point, you've already got a statement, or a transcription of a phone call you had with the magistrate's court that states, no, we didn't issue the summons, right? So if you can get the council to admit, or their representatives to admit, that the council issued the summons, then that means there wasn't a legitimate court case in a competent court. That's what it's classed as, a competent court, right? It was a make-believe court, yeah, and it meant nothing, yeah. As I say, I was last May, 2024, me and my wife were in court for failure to comply with the school attendance order because I home educated two of my children. My oldest, Angel, she was home educated by me from age 12. She went on to college, then went on to university, got a university degree, and now works in a university herself. My son, my namesake, Davey Jr., he's now 17. He was home educated, and they wanted me to provide evidence of his what he's learning. And I said, no, not doing that. And they said, well, we need to see it. How do we know that he's, well, it doesn't matter whether you know, I know. Yeah. Think about it. Logic here. Why would I not educate my namesake firstborn male son, child, right? The oldest of the, so I've got two girls, two boys. Why would I, he's got exactly the same interest as I've got, technology, computers and stuff like that. I said, I've got a BTEC National Diploma in IT that I got back in the 90s. I taught myself to computer program when I was just 13 years old with a very old Atari computer, Atari 400, and that didn't even have keys. It was just like yeah. And then upgraded. And I taught myself how to program because back then software used to be, rather than stuff you bought, it was all written out in code, and you would buy the magazine and it would have pages of this code, and you would sit there and type it all in word for word. And by the end of it, you type run and you have a game on the screen that you can play, maybe, bouncing the block or whatever. So I was fascinated by that, and I would change some of the code and I would mess about with it, and I got to know what bit does what and all that. So I taught myself, and I had a keen interest. So my namesake son has got exactly the same interest. Yeah, he's incredible at maths. I've always been great at maths. He's incredible at maths. He's incredible when it comes to technology. Right, since he was home educated, I mean, he went from secondary school where, because he wants a career as a digital creator. When he started in secondary school, we took him out after the lockdowns. When the schools reopened, he didn't go back, basically. And it was because he was being bullied. We found out at that point the severity of the bullying. So that was it. Withdrew him from school, and I said, right, okay, I'll teach you at home. Right. He went from having a 45-minute computer studies lesson every 14 days, because they'd have week A and week B, right? And it would be on the Thursday of week B for 45 minutes which meant by the time the class had actually settled down and they'd actually got to learn something, spend probably about 20 minutes a fortnight, right? That's not good enough for a child that wants a career in computers, right? Now, since he's now at college, but whilst he was homeschooled, he can program in 4 different computer languages. He can do 3D rendering. He can do pretty much he can strip down and rebuild the computer. You know, he can do all of those things that he would have never learned at school, right? But one thing we didn't do was write stuff down. What's the point? That's the school method, right? That's their method. So that at the end of the year, you can take all those bits of paper and you can read through them just before the exam. My son wasn't taking exams. He was just learning knowledge. And that's always been my ethos, is I learn it for me. When I took a BTEC National Diploma course in IT in the early 90s, I was a mature student. Right? I wasn't a school leaver. I'm very old, as you can see. But I was a mature student, and everybody else there who was a mature student was sent by their companies, right? I was the only one there that wasn't learning it for a job. I was learning it because I wanted the knowledge, yeah? I wanted to know I could program this computer. Now I want to know how to program this computer, yeah? And learn different languages, etc. So my son is the same. Yeah, it's about learning for him and not to appease a system, right? So they wanted evidence. And I said, no. I said, I've given you evidence. I've sent you emails that have, you know, with a long explanation, in-depth explanation as to what I'm teaching him. Yeah, no, that's not good. How do we know that? I said, because you're going to have to take my word. Well, we can't do that. I said, all right. So let's say I come and bring you some documents and I say, my son created them. And I said, you'll be happy with that, will you? And they said, yeah. And I said, well, how do you know my son created them? I said, what's that evidence of? It's evidence of nothing, is it? Other than my compliance, because you've got to take my word, right? That my son created those documents. That could have been, you know, if it's English and maths, that could have been from my daughter's work, my oldest daughter's work, who went through GCSEs when she went to college. I could have just taken some of that and gone, there you go, that's Davey's work. Yeah. So that's evidence of nothing. And so they insisted, and they said, well, if you don't, we're going to issue a school attendance order. I said, well, you issue whatever the hell you want. I said, you'll be rolling it up and shoving it right up your backside. I use stronger words than that, but I said, I'll be ignoring it. I'll be ignoring it. It means nothing to me. You mean nothing to me. Your organisation means nothing to me. The council are nothing to me. You empty my bins, that's it. And you don't even do that, another company does. Yeah. So they ended up taking us to court, magistrate's court. And I was determined that I wasn't going to go with any evidence, any physical evidence, other than the booklet I downloaded from the gov.uk website, which was titled Department for Education, Elective Home Education, Departmental Guidance for Parents, dated April 2019. And on page 14 of that booklet, section 5.4, a paragraph, stated that you may be asked by the local authority to agree to a home visit or an appointment at a mutually agreeable location, and to provide evidence of your child's home education. However, the parent is under no legal obligation, no legal duty, it said, under any education law to agree to such a meeting or to provide any evidence. I thought, well, bingo. Yeah. So I fought the case. While I was waiting in the courtroom for our case, because we were called in the courtroom, but they had three other things that they had to quickly run through. One was just a guy pleading guilty to not paying his business rates or something. The other guy was from the council, and he was there for a liability order, right, for council tax. So I thought, oh, this would be interesting. So he was asked, what's the number? And he said, I think he said something like 327 or something like that it was. And they said, can you just confirm that for me? He said, yeah, 327. And he goes, okay, right, okay. Any other business? And he said, we've got, I think it was something like 10 for business rates. And, okay, yeah. Anything else? No, that's it. Fine. Okay, thank you. And that was that. And I thought, well, that's not a court process. That's not a criminal or civil procedure process. Do you know what I mean? There's rules to this thing. But what they bank on is you not knowing the rules. Yeah? And therefore, if you don't know the rules, you don't know when to shout, excuse me, umpire of this chess match. Because that's what it is, essentially, a chess match. Very complicated rules. Anybody who doesn't know how to play chess will just look at the game and go, well, I don't understand it. How can that move that, but only that way, and this one moves what? Jumps over things, and I don't get it. Yeah, switch off. That's what people do with the legislation, with the law. In fact, these days, certainly since 2020, more so, people are taking a different path altogether. They're going down Magna Carta and common law and sovereign argument and all that sort of thing. And I say, whoa, what are you doing? Stop doing that. You're causing yourself harm. Yeah, you can go into a court and say, I am a living man, right? And they'll go, okay. You go, well, I am not the legal fiction. That is not me. And they go, okay then, see you later. Right, now we're here to hear the straw man who doesn't appear to have appeared at court. Right? He's not here in court because this man claims to not be him and he's been dismissed. Right? Okay, good on you. You're alive. Brilliant. Well done. Yeah, off you go then. But the trouble is, if I did that in a court, right, I've now left my straw man vulnerable and completely undefended. Nobody's turning up to support it. So a default judgment will be given in its, in place of me being able to be there to defend against it. And all the while I'm living in my straw man's house, not my house. I didn't build it. I didn't make the bricks, dig it up the clay, put it together myself. I didn't do any of that. Yeah, it all took place in commerce. Yeah, well, I'm in social housing personally, so it's all commerce, rent, for example. So it's got nothing to do with a sovereign. Yeah, you're not mentioned as a sovereign, as a living man or woman. You're not mentioned on the birth trust, right? As some people refer to as the Setagay Trust. Based on the Setagay Act 1666. How many have heard of Setagay Act? Yeah, for those who haven't, it was an act that came about during the Great Fire of London. And if you believe for 1 second that the Great Fire of London was started by a hot coal falling out a baker's oven in Pudding Lane, yeah, then I have barrels and barrels of snake oil to sell you at a great reduced cost, because you're incredibly gullible. It was clear what 1666 was all about. Probably the same with 1665, with the Great Plague. It was a false flag event, and the purpose of it was to burn the wooden churches in London that stored all the birth, deaths and marriage records, right? Because then the government of King Charles II could then claim, well, we don't know who's alive and who's dead. We haven't got a clue. All our records, they all went up in flames as they're chucking fuel onto it, you know. Yeah, oh, how terrible, you know. So what we're going to do? What we're going to do is we're going to have to use the ZKV Act. We'll reignite the ZKV Act of, I think it was 1557, under King Henry VIII, who created it. We'll have the ZKV Act 1666, which will declare everybody assumed to be lost at sea, because they said, you know, many people jumped in the Thames to get away from the fire and they drowned. Yeah. So we'll assume they're lost at sea. Yeah. They've been swept out to sea. If they're still alive, they've got 7 years to come back and claim, you know, and register that they are alive. Yeah. And then they could go back to their life and, you know, and their properties and their lives and everything else. So they've got 7 years, and after 7 years, it's then classed as beyond the seas. And so all of their estate goes to the Crown, right? Or controlled by the Crown, allegedly on your behalf, right? But that's not what it's come to now. And on the bottom of your birth certificate, you'll see it says Crown copyright. Okay, not to be used for identification purposes, it says. So it's nothing more than a trust certificate that doesn't name any living being on it as a beneficiary. It doesn't even name you as a beneficiary as your birth name. What it is you become the trust itself, magically become the trust, right? Or the physical embodiment of the trust. The trust has now got life. It's walking around. And the way they do that is using the education system every single day. In my day, it was twice a day. I don't know if it still is, but morning and afternoon used to be registration. All right. Now, the word registration, interesting word. It means the removal of your sovereignty. Okay. Regis means king, means sovereign, right? And stration, you only have to think castration to know it means the removal of something, right? So it's the removal of your sovereignty, and it's where you're agreeing to terms and conditions. That's what a registration is. So they taught you every single day in school to answer to the name of a birth trust, of a trust, right? Under the guise of, oh, we're just checking to make sure everybody's here. See who's here, who's missing, that kind of thing. No, it's to get you repetition to learn your name and treat yourself as that trust, right? You don't know it's a trust. You just think that's your name. But a surname is a surety name. That's where surname comes from, surety name. Okay, it's in commerce, right? So if you detach yourself from that trust, right, and say that's not me, you have every right to do that. Okay, and one of our peace officers, Yvonne Watson, up in Newcastle, she did that. But they found again, they deemed that her straw man, her legal fiction, didn't turn up to court, right? So got the default judgment anyway, you know. Now, as I say, if you're living in your straw man's house and you're driving your straw man's car, because that wasn't bought by you, with straw man money, okay, which is all fake anyway, just bits of paper of promises, right? And you want to have your straw man's Netflix account or Amazon delivery, next day delivery, right? Then your straw man is what needs protecting. Yeah, that's how I treat it. I know I'm alive. We all know we're all alive. We can see that, okay? But this is a game that they play. As I say, I relate it to a game of chess. And if you go down the common law, the so-called common law route, you can equate that to a game of backgammon. Equally as complicated, if you don't know the rules, right, to just look at on the surface. But it's a completely different game to chess. The system's playing chess. And they got all the rules written out for everyone to see. But they know nobody bothers reading the instructions with anything, you know. You just want to know, how do I power it on? How do I do? Yeah, that'll do. You know, I think I can figure out the rest, right? but you don't read all the instructions. You get a medication. Very, very few people I know of will read through the pamphlet, the leaflet. I don't even open it. I'll just pull that out and pop it in the bin. Take me paracetamol, you know. But the legislation, the case laws, right, all the acts and statutes that, you know, a lot of people have been taught to reject, and, you know, we only our creator is above us. Yeah. Taking that stance with the legal system and trying to expose that, you're not going to, you'll expose it to other people, but you won't expose it to themselves because they know, right? So, and they are the watchmen of that system, right? The maritime admiralty law system, right? That's why they've got, you know, essentially ships on shore, known as courts, right? Where you stand in a dry dock, right? So you stand in the dock, it's a shipping term. You've got a public gallery, it's a shipping term, a gallery. Yeah, you've got the judge who's dressed like the captain of a ship. He's got his sash and his robes on, right? So, and then you are summoned to court. You can only summon a spirit. You can't summon a sovereign being. You can only summon a spirit, right? So it's basically, this whole system works on the assumption that you are a dead legal fiction, because you declare yourself as a dead legal fiction all the time, even without saying anything. Okay. If you drove here today, like I did, then, at some point you had to stop to fill up with either electricity or petrol or diesel, right? So a transaction had to take place. Commerce took place. So you're not traveling in your private conveyance in accordance with Magna Carta 1215, because Magna Carta 1215 doesn't exist. It was annulled within 3 weeks by Pope Innocent III. So it's never stood in law. Okay. Magna Carta 1216 did, 1225 did, and 1297 did. I made a video and uploaded it yesterday. If you want more detail of that, rather than me explaining it all now and taking up half an hour, it's on my the Peace Officers UK YouTube channel, the most recent video, and it explains why it doesn't exist and why you shouldn't use it in a court. Because if you use it in a court, what you're actually doing is declaring yourself as legally illiterate and therefore able to be taken easy advantage of. Okay. And that's something that's hard to come back from in a court. You'll impress a court by having the correct knowledge and quoting it to them. And then you'll surprise them because you're automatically treated as a layperson as being illiterate. Okay. That's how they treat you. So you have to go the extra mile to impress them. Now, my case last year, school attendance order, I won that. Yeah, we were found not guilty. I defended myself and my wife. And all I needed was the right information. Right. And what won it, essentially, apart from the fact that I could give a very detailed explanation of my son's education, home education, crucially, I had that document in my hand, right, to quote from. And I did so in my closing statement. And the great thing about being a litigant in person, where you haven't got legal representation, is that you get a closing statement, but the prosecution don't. Okay. So they're only entitled to a closing statement if you're legally represented. Right. But as you're a litigant in person, you're defending yourself. In Latin, it's known as pro se. Then, you are given the luxury of giving a closing statement, summing up, putting all the pieces together and giving your explanation of events. Whereas the prosecution have only got the opportunity to prove their case by the questions they ask and the answers they receive, right? So in my closing statement, I quoted this booklet, and the magistrate, the head magistrate, there's 3 magistrates, the head magistrate said, "Can I see that?" And I said, "Yes, certainly." I said, "I've brought you a copy, as it happens." Passed it to them, and I told them which page to turn to, which paragraph, and all 3 of them sat there and read it. And that's when you could see the panic on the prosecutor's face, or the back of his head, should I say. And he quickly stood up and he said, "It's important to note, Your Honour, that this booklet is only guidance. It's not actually the legislation," right? So I jumped up and said, "It's important for my learned friend," because that's what you refer to the prosecutor as, "my learned friend, that the guidance is based on the legislation," right? And so the head magistrate, he flipped over to the cover and he said to the prosecutor, "It says here, Department for Education. They created the legislation," right? So he shut him down completely. And at that point he said, "Right, okay, yeah, fine, no problem." And you could see straight away, our mind's made up, right? So present it in the right way, with the right information, using the right tools. If you go into a court and say, "I'm a living man," or "I'm a living woman," right, then they're going to go, "Oh, we've got one of these cranks again." Yes, my love.
What is if, you know, I don't know anything enough about whatever, and I have to go to court, and I ask somebody to represent or to speak for me, but not the legal. Would they allow it, and would that be?
Right, you're not entitled to do that unless you have. So you can have a litigant's representative, right, which is a bit like having somebody fight the case for you, right, but only in certain circumstances where you're incapable. So the court has to agree to it. You can have a Mackenzie friend. A Mackenzie friend is somebody who sits next to you and supports you. They're not allowed to speak. Yeah, they can whisper to you or they can write stuff down. They're there more for moral support, but also they can take notes, right? And so that you can refer to. If you had a mental health condition and you're incapable of representing yourself, where it would prejudice your case, right, if you were forced to, you can apply to the court to have a litigation, I think it's called a litigation assistant, but somebody who represents you, and that can be anybody. They don't have to be legally trained, but they fight the case as if they are you, in a sense, right? They're basically speaking the words for you, really.
Apply for one, if your English is not great and you don't understand.
Yes, that would probably be acceptable if you stated that. Although they may say, "Well, then, we'll agree to a translator," so that might be the difficulty. But it's something that you could potentially claim that, or you could just claim, excessive anxiety or something. Get your doctor to write you a letter to confirm, and present that as supporting evidence, and they will agree to that. So in the case that I've been helping with, that's in the Royal Court of Justice at the end of next week, such a situation actually exists because the person who is the litigant, the respondent, suffers with bad anxiety, and so applied to the court to have her partner represent her, right? And the court agreed, right? So she's not severely mentally disabled or anything like that, or incapacitated in that way, but her anxiety was taken into consideration, and I think because she's got a bit of a history of anxiety with her doctor. So if you don't currently have you know, with your dog, if you want a situation like that, that in future you want somebody to represent you who isn't, you know, doesn't work for the Crown, because that's the thing about all solicitors and lawyers and whatever, barristers, they work for the Crown first and foremost. They take their oath when they take the bar to the Crown. So they're servants of the Crown first and foremost, and you're secondary. Okay. So, and that's why in a lot of cases, what you'll get is the solicitor just trying to find the quickest, easiest deal. They'll come to you and say, that, you know, well, if you plead guilty and, you know, and we'll get this reduced down to that. That's just their job, just to get the case done. They don't care about the result. Yes, Sheba.
Most people would prefer it not to get that far.
Yeah, that's true.
Can we go back a step?
Yeah, definitely. Right. So, I mean, in a lot of these cases, unfortunately, you need to sort of get to grips with the fact that you may well have to go to court, right? But don't be scared off by that, okay? Because the court is where you're going to get the final say. Yeah, it's where you're going to get your justice, right? So if you can get over that anxiety of a court, and I understand that anxiety. I've been in court many, 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 many times before. Very naughty boy many years ago, in my youth, but mainly for traffic stuff over the years. So, you know, I've got a lot of confidence in court. It doesn't bother me. It's just another room filled with people. That's it. But if you can get over that, right, you've been educated throughout your life to avoid court, right, and to fear courts, because that's usually where you end up to be punished, right? It's very rare that it's you taking the action, but there's certain circumstances where you should take action, right? If you're getting threats from the council that are causing you anxiety, you can claim harassment because they've contacted you on more than 2 occasions. And with harassment, under the Harassment Act, there has to be at least 2 occasions, 2 separate occasions. So you could do them for harassment. You could take them to court. You could sue them. You could sue the enforcement agents who come out to your home, threatening to clamp your vehicle and come in your house and take all your goods. All you need to know is they have no power, right? They have no power. You have all of the power, okay? Because you can trespass any one of them. The only people you can't trespass is police officers when they're there for a criminal matter, okay? Then they have jurisdiction to, like, enter your home, that kind of thing. In some cases, they need a warrant, but in other cases, depending on the situation, if they believe there's an immediate risk of harm to somebody in the property, they can enter the property by force, that kind of thing. But it has to be to do with a criminal matter, okay? They're not entitled to get involved in any civil matter. And on that basis, you can trespass police officers. If they're there to support bailiffs or enforcement agents, you can trespass them. You can say, you are not welcome here. You're now being trespassed. Please leave this property. If they say, we're here to prevent a breach of the peace, you just instruct them that they can do so from the public highway. Yeah, but this is your private property. Now you can quote to them R versus Robert White 2022, which was a case where Robert White had bailiffs trying to get into his home to repossess his home, and the police ended up breaking into his home and arrested him, assaulted him, tasered him, arrested him, took him out, and then allowed the bailiffs to go in there and, take possession of the home. So he was then prosecuted for assault on emergency workers and was found not guilty on the basis that the police officers, didn't matter that they were dressed in uniform or the fact that one of them was a police sergeant. It didn't matter it was a civil matter and they were not entitled to be there. Therefore, they were intruders. They were unwanted intruders, and the defendant, being Bob White, had a right to remove them using reasonable force if necessary. Okay. Now, reasonable force, obviously, you have to learn not to let your anger or your adrenaline get the better of you. Okay, in a situation like that, where you've got enforcement agents, the enforcement agents can be trespassed. Doesn't matter if they've got a legitimate order from the court, makes no difference, right? They can still be trespassed. Yeah. And if they refuse to leave, you can sue them for trespass. Like Wayne Layton in Layton versus Bristow and Souter 2023, where he was awarded £4,000 in damages because he'd asked Bristow and Souter enforcement agents on 3 separate occasions on video. And that's another thing. Always record the interaction. Okay. Always record it. Don't rely on their body cameras ever. Just pull out your phone and start recording them. Don't feel embarrassed or shy to do so. We live in that kind of world now. Everything is recorded. And you will find that they will likely behave slightly better if you're holding a phone in your hand. Even if you're not recording, they don't know. Okay. So, back in the old days, back in 70s, 80s or whatever, nobody had cameras in their pockets, or CCTV cameras outside their house or Ring doorbells or anything like that. So there was a lot of bully boy tactics that used to go on decades ago, foot in the door, all that sort of thing, that they're not legally entitled to do so. And if they do, you can use reasonable force to shove them back. But it has to be reasonable. Okay. Never put your fists up. That's not reasonable. That's saying, I want to have a fight. Okay. I suggest what you do is you just put your arms out and walk towards them, right? And into them to move them. You're entitled to touch them. You're entitled to grab hold of them, turn them round and gently shove them out. But if you shove them with great force and they end up going over, cracking their head, potentially fatal, right? You're going to prison. Yeah, unless you can prove that if you were just walking back, forward, or just gently shoving them, right, and then they fell over. As long as you've got evidence of that, you're fine. You're covered. That's. I actually know somebody in my local town who got stabbed in the back. I mean, he was a nasty bit of work. He ended up dying, but it was kicked off in my road, at the end of my road, outside the supermarket. I live right next to the main central town. He'd gone back to his car to get a hammer that he was going to go and use against this guy who he had a bit of a beef with. And so as he went back to his car, this guy picked up the knife that had been, in the scuffle, had ended up on the floor, and just shoved it in his back. He ended up dying. The guy got off with self-defense, right? Because luckily there was an off-duty police officer who had intervened and tried to, break it up, the scuffle, just before he went to get the hammer out the car, right? And he heard him say and testified that he said he was going to go and get the hammer, right? So then he was entitled to stab him in the back to stop him from doing that because he was in immediate danger. So in that situation, there are extremes where you'd think, well, he stabbed him in the back. Why didn't he just run off? How did he get not guilty? But it can happen that way. Okay. So if you're just gently, and calmly, trying to usher them off of the property, you can walk into them. What you can't do is kick them, punch them, all of that sort of, grab them by the throat or anything like that, because that would be deemed to be disproportional force and unreasonable. Okay.
So is it true that the bailiffs can only come to your house 3 times?
I don't know whether there's a set amount of times that they can come, but what normally happens, they would generally only come once or twice, right? Before they hand it back to, this is what I suggest to people. So, my car is worth less than £1,350, right? If you've got a vehicle worth less than £1,350, that's the legal threshold for anything to be taken on a taking control of goods order, right? So my car is worth probably 600 quid at best. Yeah. So it can't be taken, right? So it makes no difference if they said, we're going to put a clamp on the car. I'll say, well, you can take that off or I'm going to cut it off. Yeah. If they say to you, well, if you cut it off, you'll be committing an offence. You're not committing an offence. I guarantee you they haven't got the correct order, a judgment from a court. They've got something they applied for online through the money claim online process through the Civil National Business Centre in Northampton, right? Which is a nonsense. It's computer says yes. Yeah. You get it just by applying. Okay. You don't have to go to court. You don't need legal representatives or anything like that. And it's a cheaper process that they've been getting away with, right? But that holds no legal powers whatsoever because it's not being authorised by a competent, proper person, that being a judge, magistrate, justice of the peace, or a court legal advisor. Okay, so it's just computer says yes. They bring that out. They show you a copy of it on the tablet sometimes, right? But there's no signature. There's no court seal. There'll be probably in some cases just a round stamp that says the county court. Yeah, that's not an official court stamp, right? So therefore, by rejecting that order or warrant or liability order, whatever it might be, writ, whatever, you're not committing a contempt of court. Okay. Now the thing about contempt of court is if it was a genuine order that's been signed by a judge, got his signature. Now, it doesn't have to be a physical wet signature. It can be a digital signature. But if it's a digital signature, it must have the, like an authorization code where you can double check that person. You can cross-reference it. So it'd be something like using a company like VeriSign or DocuSign or one of these other digital signature e-signature companies, as long as it can be confirmed that the person who is named there is the person who gave the authority, right? But it must have a court seal, and the court seal would be embossed, right? So it can't just be photocopied. Would be a proper court embossed seal, and that then gives it the authority of the court, right? That means when they turn up with it and flash it in front of you and you say, no, go away, you're now being trespassed, right? They now have to go back to the court. And this is the correct protocol. This is the problem, you see, because these people are idiots who do that kind of job. They're, knuckle dragging morons. They don't themselves know the laws, right? They know some of it roughly, basically. But they believe where it says they can use force to enter the property, and that's only in certain circumstances. That's only in the circumstances of criminal court fines, stamp duty or income tax, right? Anything else, they can't force entry. But in the cases where, unless they've got a warrant, of course, a warrant of entry. But when it states that force may be used to gain entry, it doesn't mean shoving a person out the way or wrestling with somebody. It means force against an inanimate object like a lock or a door or a window or something like that. Okay. It doesn't mean a person. They have no authority to put hands on you whatsoever. So if you want to stop them, with the locksmith standing behind them or next to them, you want to stop them from drilling out the lock on your door, just stand in front of your door like that. Stand there. Nobody can move you. The police can't get involved. It's a civil matter. And as we stated earlier, Section 26, Criminal Justice and Courts Act 2015 forbids them from getting involved. Right? They can't act as an agent to create a benefit to the agent and a detriment to yourself. It states it in the legislation. Yes, my friend.
What I don't understand is what you said with your T-shirt.
Yeah.
They sort of making up that you're impersonating a police officer. How is it these people get away with like their version of the law and get away with it, and they're not going to prison? I don't understand how the law's on our side,
Yeah.
and yet they can twist it in such a bad way that we end up always on the wrong side of it.
Yeah.
And they're not punished.
Yeah. The reason being goes back to what I was saying earlier about your level of knowledge, or the average level of knowledge of the average layperson, right? If you're misquoting things, right? If you went into court, for example, you were taking them to court, suing them, or, even a private criminal prosecution, which you're entitled to do. So you might report them to police. I mean, police, I think it was the case law of R versus Howell. I'm trying to think of the date. 1921, I think it was something like that. R versus Howell, but that states that if a police officer witnesses a bailiff using force to enter a property, force against the person, then they are duty bound by law to arrest the bailiff, right? There's also other case laws that state that one of them was, I think, from 1984. So in the great scheme of things, it's classed as recent case law, where somebody hit a bailiff over the head with a milk bottle, right? And they were found not guilty on the grounds that it wasn't an offence because they'd already told them to leave. So that's where sometimes you will get a judge that likes you, agrees with you, and will give you the justice that you deserve, right? But it comes down to that level of knowledge. If you go into a court and you say, he put hands on me, I'm a sovereign man, I'm a living man, only the God is above me, only my creator is above me, I stand here under common law, all that sort of stuff, you ain't winning your case, no matter how much you try. They're not going to let you win the case because they're all corrupt. The judges are there as umpires of the chess game, okay? They're umpires of the game. And what they expect from you is for you to know the rules of the game well enough to go to the judge, the umpire, and say, he's cheating. Yeah, they're cheating. Judge, can you do something about it? And they'll say, well, why do you think they're cheating? And you will read out the legislation, and he will read it and go, oh, excuse me. And he will look at it and he'll go, yes, you're right. They are cheating because it clearly states here that you don't have to do this or that you are protected there. But again, if you don't say it, right, they don't hear it and therefore they don't consider it, right? So where people are not getting their justice is where they're misinformed or they're using wrong information or the certain things they're not bringing up in the case itself. Okay, you need it to be heard. Yeah, either put in a statement and then reiterated in a physical court case, or just said in court. Yeah, so it becomes part of the court transcript. Yes.
So a lot of people that are sort of disputing these bills and that are women.
Yeah.
So what can you say specifically to them to give them the encouragement of dealing with these hunks of men at the door?
Right, so I can tell you that if you're a woman, they're more scared of you than they are of me, okay? With me, they can just have a fist fight if they wanted to, Yeah, it's a bit different when they're dealing with a woman. Imagine they're dealing with some elderly woman. Yeah, they've got to be very careful about putting hands on them, that kind of thing, because morally they get, you know, if that video gets shared, that's their reputation gone. That's other companies then who use them saying, no, we're not going to use that company anymore. We're not going to use Bristow and Suter because they're enforcement agents. We need a result for this debt. We don't need aggravation, you know, and unlawful actions, right? So they're more scared of a woman than they are the average man, right? So I would say you've probably got an easier job to deal with, because I think men are naturally intimidated by women in certain ways, and maybe vice versa. I don't know. I can't speak for women, but these people have had to respect their wives or girlfriends or mothers or aunties, grandmas, that kind of thing. So they've been brought up usually to have a certain level of respect for a woman rather than for a man. So I would say, if you're a woman, just stand your ground, know that they're not going to put their hands on you because they're concerned that you're going to scream sexual assault or something like that. It's unlikely a bloke's going to do that, you see. So if you was to say to them, for example, if they're saying, well, we'll just push past you, we'll do, then you say to them, if you put your hands on me, I would deem that as a sexual assault. They don't want to, suddenly you're going to make them panic a little bit. Hang on a minute, because I mean, these are licensed agents, right? And you can complain to their licensing authority and have them disbarred from it, you know?
They might send a man and a woman.
Yeah, they might send a man and a woman. They might send a woman who looks like a man. I've had that before.
Yeah.
I've had that before. And and I just told her, no, not interested. And that's what it comes down to. You answer the door to them. What I don't recommend you do is get into arguments with them about the legitimacy of the signature of the order, who gave it, which court, or anything like that, right? Just open the door and just go, no, thank you, I'm not interested. And shut the door. That's it. They can't break your door down. Okay. Just open it. No, thank you, I'm not interested. Right. I like to mess with them sometimes, right? I've had many, many visits. I've dealt with bailiffs, sort of enforcement agents, literally dozens of times for myself and other people. And sometimes I like to mess about with them, and you can too. Yeah. One thing you can do is only ask them questions, and any question, doesn't matter what it is. Yeah. So you start with, let's say I had somebody once from Jacobs, right? And I answered the door and he said, Mr. Stewart. I said, who are you? So I didn't answer his question, right? Because I was determined I wasn't going to make any statements whatsoever. I was only going to ask questions. Yeah. And I said, who are you? And he said, so he got his ID from, oh, shut up. From Jacobs Enforcement. And I said, who's Jacob? Well, we're an enforcement agent. We're working on behalf of the council. Why isn't Jacob here? Why has he sent you? Well, we'll work for Jacob Enforcement. I said, is Jacob scared of me or something? So, doesn't he like me? Right? So you can just take it off of subject like that, get down to eventually you could say, what's your favourite colour? Yeah. What's your favourite type of car? Yeah. Who was the first man on the moon? Doesn't matter what the question is. Just screw with them. Yeah. Because my attitude at the time was, I'm wasting his time. He's getting nowhere with me. I'm creating no contract with him because I'm making no statements. You can only create a contract when you make a statement, right? When you answer yes or no to something, right? But if you answer a question with a question, you never answer their questions, right? And eventually, he just turned around eventually and just went, whatever, and then got the letter and just chucked it in the doorway like that and turned around and went off, right? So always answer the door. Never not answer the door, okay? Don't hide behind the sofa and pretend to be out, because that way you're inviting them to come back, okay? If they've come to you in the morning, they've knocked on the door, you've gone, shh, everyone, shh. Yeah, don't. Okay, I think he's gone, right? And they go, well, he'll go to another one, and if he's done early enough, he'll come back on his way back and knock again, right? Or he might, if he's in the area next week, he might come back. What you need to do is let them know that it doesn't matter how many times they come to you, you're getting nowhere, pal. Yeah, you're getting nothing from this address. Yeah, nothing at all, not a penny. If anything, you're wasting your time and your pennies. Yeah, because somebody's paying for that fuel and it ain't me. Yeah, somebody's paying your wage and it ain't me. Right? So when in future, because they make a record of this, they keep a record of the interaction, and because they have to send that report back to the council or the parking company or whatever and say what happened, you know, why did they not get paid? Sometimes they put down no tangible assets, right? They haven't got a vehicle there to take. We can't get access to the property. We can tell by the type of state of their curtains, they haven't got anything, do you know what I mean? Or we can see through their window and there's nothing there that's worth taking, right? So they'll put no tangible assets, and then next time, when they're making their plan, we've got all these people to go and see, and you're on the list, they'll look and it says no tangible assets, right? And they'll go, oh, we won't bother with that one. Right? Because at the end of the day, they're looking for low-hanging fruit for easy pickings. So if you don't make yourself the low-hanging fruit, if instead you let them know, you could do that beforehand if you want, when you get a notification, a letter, email, text, whatever, saying about enforcement action, and we're going to be coming to your property, we've got to take control of goods order. They'll use all the big words and everything. I mean, one interaction I had with one of my texts, it was brilliant. I dropped a few C-bombs, to say the least, because they said, agents will be attending your property today. And I said, excellent. I look forward to you coming. I run an organisation, I said, that teaches people how to deal with cunts at their door. Right? And I said, so please send the cuntiest cunts you've got. I said, the more the merrier. I said, I'm sure you've got plenty to choose from, right? And then I just signed it off with ready when you are, right? I had no more. Now, this was a back and forth interaction until I said that. And then there was no more text and nobody turned up at my property, right? So you can bat it back to them, yeah? And let them know that you are confident. You know your rights. Yeah. There's nothing they can do. I've never paid a penny of council tax in my life. And I've been on this planet 57 years. Yeah. I live in social housing. I've never paid a penny in my life. Never will pay a penny. Right. Because I just go, no, I'm not interested. And they go, all right then. Okay.
It'd be different if you owned a property.
Be different if I owned a property. But then I can take action through a fight through the courts, right? I can wait till they take me to court to petition me for bankruptcy to take my property, and I'll go to court and I'll say, who issued the summons for that alleged liability order? We did. You're not allowed to, are you? That means, technically, that case didn't take place, did it? And if that case didn't take place, then technically that means no order of the court was awarded, was it? It's all fake, isn't it? Show us the liability. Well, we can't. We haven't got it. Oh, right, because I checked with Trust Online via the government website, and it done a search of all its databases of judgments, orders and fines, and it came back with nothing. It said nothing listed. So your words are saying we've got a liability order, but you can't produce it. You admit in court that you created the summons, you issued it, yeah, which you're not entitled to do by law, right? That's an offence known as uttering, right? It's an old English offence of uttering. These days it's just covered under the Fraud Act. But it's producing documentation that is meant to look like it's come from a proper authority of the court, and of course it hasn't done, right? It hasn't done. Sorry?
And then not go back and reissue it, not do it the right way.
No, because liability orders don't exist. They haven't done since 1st of October 2003. So this method that they're using is just it's a scam based on people's lack of knowledge of the rules of chess, right?
Does it also mean that you can't be tried for the same offence twice thing? Is that?
Well, you can do these days. You have double jeopardy rules that changed, I think, after
Civil.
the Stephen Lawrence thing, doesn't it? To have the double jeopardy rule. But with it's like it. No, with a civil matter, right? With a civil matter, like county court, for example, they'll take you to court. If they lose their case, they've got 21 days to appeal it, right? So they appeal it and still lose their case. They're not going after that case anymore. And guess what? When it comes to things like liability orders with the council tax, if they lose that case, they ain't ever coming after you again, because you're going to use exactly the same playbook and they're going to lose that case as well. So once you've sorted that, right, and gone through that and proven that there is no order of the court, there's nothing legitimate, and the reason they can't do anything about it, they can't take it to a county court now because there's no contract. Before, they could take it to a county court because they are alleging there's a court order, and that is good enough to use in a county court. Until you expose the fact that actually there is no order, it doesn't exist. Yeah, because county courts and only deal with breaches of contract. That's all they deal with, breaches of contract. If you've got a contract with somebody, you've breached it, you haven't paid, you haven't done what you agreed to do, then they can take action in the county court. But if in the case of council tax, there's no contract, right? So there's no breach of contract. So that's why they don't take it to the county court. If there was a contract, if you did agree to it, and in order for a contract to be legitimate, not only does it have to have your full consent, but there has to be full disclosure as well of all of the terms and conditions, right? Without full disclosure and full consent of all parties involved named within the contract's null and void, right? That's how the Magna Carta was null and voided, because of lack of full consent, right? He'd signed it under duress, so therefore Pope Innocent III annulled it, and retrospectively, so it now didn't exist at all.
With the word hearing, a friend of mine said to me, an ex-judge told her that you could have the best paperwork, everything is bang on, but if you don't speak it, they're not going to take no notice of it. But they don't really allow you to talk. You've got 2 minutes, 5 minutes, that's it. Hurry, hurry, hurry. And then you just get put off. So how can you get around the fact to say to them, sorry, God for swearing, shut the fuck up, it's my turn to talk. You know, how can you say that to a judge nicely? So
the first thing you need to do is ensure that enough time has been allocated for the trial, right, for the case. They will ask, when the case is set, they will ask, like, how long do you need, for the case? And if you say 10 minutes, they'll allocate you 10 minutes, and therefore you haven't got a lot of time. If you think I can get this done in 30 minutes, then they'll allocate you 30 minutes. If you say it's going to take 2 days, there's a lot of witnesses to get through, they'll allocate 2 days. And you get the opportunity to give your point of view. And that's when you say, what you need to say in that time. So if it's a criminal case, let's say magistrate's court, you take the stand, you take the oath, either the religious oath or the attestation, legal attestation. You take the oath to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And then all of your words are evidence, right? And they will be heard by the court. But you're absolutely right. That's why I said about a hearing, you know, you could have technically all the paperwork there, everything laid out. But if you don't speak it, it's not called a reading, it's called a hearing. Yeah. So you need to, those are your notes. Now, in a lot of cases, the judge, in order to get a grasp on the case beforehand, if he's got time, will read through the statements, through the court bundles. But they don't always have an awful lot of time. And quite often what will happen is they haven't read it. So they're having to, and at that point, if enough time has been allocated, they will take 10-minute break to go and quickly read it and come back and whatever. But it's up to you then to point out the relevant parts of that statement, pick apart that statement. If they've got witnesses, then your cross-examination of the witnesses, you need to ask the right questions. Certain questions they will strike out and say, no, they don't have to answer that. That's irrelevant, that kind of thing. Even though you think it's irrelevant, it won't be, right? But you can, if you present yourself well, this is why I say never go into a court and start saying, I'm a living man, this is my court now, I'm the highest authority here. Yeah, as some people, trust me, have taught people to do, to go in there and claim you're the, you know, question the judge or the magistrate. Are you sitting on your oath today? Are you under your oath? All this sort of stuff. Imagine somebody, right, you've got two friends who are having a dispute, right? And they come to you to settle the dispute and they're willing to accept your judgment and you're going to hear them out both what they've got to say. Imagine one party is really polite and professional and tells you exactly, lays out, and you go, okay, yeah, that sounds reasonable. Now what have you got to say? And they go, who do you think you are? What right have you got? Have you taken an oath? So you're going to be going, you know, prick, I'm here to help you. I'm here to give you, you know, to try and find in your favour. That's what you need me for. So don't give the judge attitude, because you've already lost your case if you do, right? That's why I say don't use common law in there and try and argue jurisdictions, because all of your fighting points are in legislation or case law. Yeah, they've already been argued, they've already been set. All you've got to do is find the right legislation and then apply it, right? Read it out in court, say it's written there, and they can't go against that, okay? So if you can prove your case in that way, you will win your case. You've just got to rebut all their points. And as I say, all the rules of the game of chess are there. I say chess, you know, it's not actual chess, but.
So my sister today has just had a letter from her local council, because I've done it, I'm doing it as well. We've done the 3-letter process with the council. I started with bailiffs first, and then the bailiffs, mine's gone back to the council, so I've done it again. But my sister today has got a notice of insolvency action from Pendle Borough Council. So they're saying that, do you want me to read it?
Yeah, if you want.
So it says council tax account, their address. Liability orders have been issued in respect to the above debt on the 3rd of June 25 and the 21st of August 24. Since that time, despite various attempts to collect the debt, you have still failed to make the payment. This is unacceptable as the balance outstanding is £8,000.
Yeah.
Insolvency action is now to be commenced. The action will involve a petition being served to commence bankruptcy proceedings. The costs associated with this course of action will be substantial. The hearings will take place at Birmingham Crown Court, and you will be requested to attend. Should you fail to attend...
Sorry, they'll take place where?
Burnley Crown Court.
Oh, Burnley.
Burnley.
Oh, it's in Burnley.
Where does she?
Burnley.
She lives in Burnley, right? So it'll take place at the
And you will be requested to attend. Should you fail to attend, the court hearing would proceed in your absence. Should the council's application be successful, it will affect your credit rating and the property you own will be at risk. A successful application will also incur further costs. Be advised that the account is now on hold until the 22nd of September 2025 for the balance to be paid in full. Failure to do so will result in the case being passed to legal department for bankruptcy proceedings to be investigated. It is in your best interest not to ignore this letter and give the matter your immediate attention. Yours sincerely, and it's actually signed by a person, Mrs. R. Pallich.
Yeah.
Or Pallich, Insolvency and Recovery Officer.
Mm-hmm. Right. So essentially the same as the case in the Royal Court of Justice next week, right? So hopefully by then you'll have some case law that you can refer to. What I recommend you do, are you on Telegram?
Yeah, she is too.
She is too. Get her to contact me on Telegram, and I.
So what's your time? Your channel on Telegram?
So you've got Peace Officers UK. If you go onto Telegram and search at the @ Peace Officers, that will give you the Peace Officers UK group. But if you put at Peace Officers UK as one word, that will give you me as a direct message.
At Peace Officers UK.
At Peace Officers UK, all one word.
Yeah.
Right? You'll get me directly. If you put at Peace Officers, you'll get the Peace Officers UK group. That's my group, which you can join as well. But contact me directly. And I will run the details, her details through ChatGPT to get it to produce the rebuttal for that particular letter. It's very easy to rebut it because they work on the basis, always, all of these organisations work on the basis that you know nothing, you're all illiterate, right? When it comes to the law. That's how they look at you. And so they will try any number of things, and 9.9 times out of 10, they'll get away with it, right? So you have to show that you are not one of those people. Yeah, you know what you're doing, you know what points are going to be raised, and ChatGPT comes up with an amazing, because I've obviously done this same document, so I'll probably just send you the template and you just fill in your own details. But it does an amazing job at picking it apart and explaining what exists and what doesn't exist, and what legislation and case laws and stuff like that. So as I say, if you contact me, you can do it yourself easy enough on ChatGPT. You just say, create a letter to Burnley Council, whoever it is, rejecting their claim of a council tax based on a liability order or liability orders. You can put the numbers of the liability orders so that when it's creating the letter for you, it will put everything in the right place for you. Require, you just say to ChatGPT, require the council to provide evidence of the liability order in the form of an office copy, right? A physical office copy. And you can also say to it to, I mean, I can do this for you. It's not a problem. If you want to just contact me, I can do it for you. And then you can, yeah, then you can see.
We might already have one on the website. Choose resources and choose templates.
Yeah, I think we might have one.
Already be on there, but if not,
because I've done this for loads of people, so I think
any templates we create,
we put them on the
always
website.
put it on the website so everyone can have a look at it.
Is this why they're talking about getting rid of council tax?
Yeah, changing.
Yeah. And then they're changing it to a home tax now for every home over £5,000.
No, and that's council tax as well. Council tax and stamp
Yeah,
duty.
I've heard that they're supposed to be changing council tax in the near future, or they're planning to.
But with,
Um,
sorry,
They're
with
supposed to be
the,
adding the TV licence to the council tax. That's
no, they can't.
TV licence is a joke. You just go, no, shut the door and they go away.
With the council tax and the stamp duty being removed, they're going to amalgamate it. It means HMRC can now have powers to get into the properties where with the council tax they can't. So it's the important part. So they're going to use that. But also, if you are made, I've just texted my friend. If he reversed, they tried to bankrupt him, and he filled out a 1AA form or challenged the original fake case with an N244. So when he filled in a 1AA form, they reversed the bankruptcy and stopped it straight away.
So that will be the N244 is to set aside an order,
Yeah.
and that will be if it's gone to court, right, and the judgment's already been given, right. So the bankruptcy petition has been awarded, either in full or in the interim.
Then the 1AA form is what reverses the bankruptcy.
Then, yeah, the N244, then you would have to apply to the court to set aside and, you know, provide your evidence bundle as to why it ought to be set aside. And that is based on the fact that there is no liability order. You've done all the relevant checks. It comes back as no orders given by any court. It cannot be substantiated. It cannot be produced in a physical form. So therefore, it's, it ought to be set aside. Yeah, go on.
Sorry, real quickly. So bearing in mind the liability order can be rebutted,
Yeah.
does it matter how you stop paying council tax? Like, does it make a difference if you just cancel your direct debit one day and you're not writing to them with freedom of information and this and that and the other? Is there any difference?
You could literally just stop paying them. That's it. Yeah. As I said, I've never paid them a penny in my life, ever.
It is different if you own your own home.
It is different, yeah, if you own your own home, but there are things you can put in place. Now, the first thing I would recommend is to submit form AP1, Alpha Papa 1, to the land registry. You can download it from the land registry. And question number 1 on that form is to name the local authority. So what you do, instead of putting the council down as the local authority, you put you down as the local authority, right? Now, this is how the council have been getting away with it for so long, in collusion with the Crown, essentially, or the Crown representatives, i.e. solicitors. You go to your solicitor, you say, I want to buy this property, I'd like to instruct you to do all the legal paperwork. And they go, yeah, no worries, we'll do all that. We'll fill out the AP1 form for you. And what do? It says local authority name, and they put the council. Now, what they've done on your behalf as an agent of you is to declare the council as the local authority for that property. So now the local council can charge you a tax on it. The local council can issue a compulsory purchase order if they want to build a new Sainsbury's or a car park where your house is, because you've given them that authority. So you need to take away that authority by changing the record to say you are the authority. If you've got a trust, a private trust, a personal private trust, then, I mean, if you've got property, I would definitely recommend setting one up, right? A private trust, and then putting the house in the name of the trust and naming yourself as a beneficiary and any other beneficiaries, your children, your partner, whatever, as beneficiaries, which means you get to live in the house. Yeah. And that means as you're living in the house, the council will try and charge you for council tax. But the house is owned by the trust and not by you, right? And because it's owned by the trust, no charging orders can be put against it. And even if they was to petition you for bankruptcy, the house doesn't belong to you, so that's not included in the insolvency. So Form AP1, now you will have some resistance from Land Registry, because I've been telling a lot of people about this who've got their properties, and so they've now started responding to people by saying, oh no, you can't do that. Now they do that. It doesn't mean no, you can't do that. What it means is, if we say that, most people will go, oh, I heard you could, I tried it and I failed. It turns out you can't do that, right?
Put it in a trust name or a company name. It doesn't have to be in your own personal name.
Yeah, you could do. That's what I'm saying. If you you allocate who you get to choose who the local authority is. It doesn't even have to be your name. It could be somebody else's name who you want to appoint as the local authority.
Using a limited company's name, and the limited company owns these particular properties, would that work the same?
Yeah, because it's not the limited company they're coming after. It's you in your personal capacity. And so if it's owned by the company, the property's owned by the company, it's not owned by you personally.
I'm stuck with some standing orders in the morning.
Maybe put it in a limited.
What about from the property's mortgaged?
So the difficulty there is that the mortgage company will also be named as an interested party on the Land Registry. What I would suggest you do is look on my YouTube channel, Peace Officers UK, for the video quite a way down the list about promissory notes. Right? You can download a template promissory note from the peaceofficers.uk website.
Well, we've got one here.
Got one here.
We've got one here.
And you settle the mortgage with that, right? Now, it's a bit like writing a check. Yeah, it's an I promise to pay. Now, it will be rejected by the mortgage company, make no mistake, but what they won't do is return it to you, right? What they will do is securitize it and sell it, right? Because it has value. And it has value according to the Bills of Exchange Act 1882, Part 4. It has value the moment it's being created, endorsed with your signature, and delivered, right? Acceptance under chapters 61, 45 and 46 of the Bills of Exchange Act 1882 states that acceptance is defined as delivery or notification. So it doesn't come down to them being able to say, I don't accept that, right? There's case law in, there's several case laws, but the most prominent one is actually written on the top of the note, is Fielden and Platt Limited versus Salim Najjar, 1969, in which Lord Denning, who was Master of the Rolls, the highest of the judges at the time, he declared, and I quote, "We have repeatedly said in this court that a bill of exchange or promissory note is to be treated as cash. It is to be honoured unless there is some good reason to the contrary." So his declaration in that case law says that a promissory note is a cash note, right? No different than a Scottish banknote, right? No different at all, because a Scottish banknote is not legal tender. Legal tender, even a debit card's not legal tender. A cheque, not legal tender. Bank transfer, not legal tender. Legal tender is a very specific definition. And in this country, legal tender is Bank of England banknotes and Royal Minted coins, right? Those are the only things that are classified as legal tender, right? That doesn't mean, people confuse legal tender with thinking legally acceptable, right? That's not what it means. It just means that those are defined as legal tender. Yeah, Scottish banknotes are just promissory notes. Bank of England banknotes are just promissory notes. They contain the amount that they're worth, £20, for example. They contain a promise. I promise to pay the bearer on demand the sum of £20. And they contain a signature to give it the authority and give it its value. You do the same with a promissory note. You fill in the details, the amount that's owed, the full amount that's owed, only yours is not an on-demand promissory note, it's what's known as a payment scheduled promissory note, right? So that means you can set the amount every month that they must come to your property that you've put on there, yeah, bring the original promissory note, right, so not a photocopy, right, to prove that they still have a right to claim on it, and claim their £50, £20, whatever it might be that you put on there. I would suggest to come across to a court as being acting in good faith, you don't just put £1, unless all you owe is £100, in which case you could do. But if you're owing tens or hundreds of thousands of pounds, say £50 a month, right? That's all I can afford to pay. So you bring that promissory note to me, yeah, show it to me, and I'll give you your £50 for that month, right? And then next month you come back with that note, I'll give you another £50. But all the time you hold that note, it's worth the, say, £200,000 that's written on it, right? It maintains its value. Now, you can either come and collect it from me. I'm not doing it digitally. That's why you're making it financially unviable for them to come and collect on it. It's going to cost them more than 50 quid to come and collect 50 quid, right? It's not going to be worthwhile them doing. So what you're doing is forcing their hand to trade it, to sell it, right, and get their money. Now, they won't get £200,000 for a £200,000 note. They'll probably get 10 grand, something like that, right? But they don't care because they haven't lost a penny. And you think, well, hang on, what do you mean they haven't lost a penny? They lent me £200,000. They didn't lend you anything, right? You created the money into existence. Your mortgage agreement is a promissory note. Got all the same elements. It's got the amount owed, the payment schedule, when the payment becomes due each month, and you know the term. It has to be a fixed or determinable period of time, right? That the note can be claimed. So a payment schedule one, if you came every month, collected £50, you could calculate the exact date that you'll collect your final £50, right? So it keeps it in line with the Bills of Exchange Act. So what happened is when you went to the bank and asked them for a mortgage, what they did is printed up a template promissory note, got you to sign it. Now they've got a note worth £200,000, right? They add that to their bookkeeping, so now inflates by £200,000, yeah, that they didn't have before. You created the money into existence in the form of one £200,000 cash note, right? They keep that in their safe and add it to their records. Then what they do is lend you that £200,000 that you created, right? They lend it to you, so then they deduct it from their bookkeeping and add it to your account, right? And they keep the promissory note that's worth £200,000, right? They've just lent you money that you created into existence with your signature, right? So when you don't pay it, when you default on it, as long as they've made every effort, satisfied the Financial Services Authority to make every effort to get the payments back again, if they can't get them payments back, what they can do is just sell their note, right, on the international markets. Now, you might think, but that's a debt note, but all money is debt. It's all on blind faith. That £10 note you've got in your pocket is just a piece of paper with some ink on it, you know, and pretty holograms and stuff. So it's got no actual physical value. Yeah, it exists purely on faith. That's the same as a promissory note. That's the same as a mortgage agreement is known as a mortgage note, right, in law, because it's a promissory note. It's the same with a loan agreement. It only differs with doesn't really differ, but, you know, in terms of the classification, but the fact that whether you're allowed to settle it with a promissory. So what I'm saying is your own promissory note that you create yourself, You've done the same as what you did at the bank with the mortgage. You've created £200,000 into existence, and then you've given that to the bank and said that should pay off the £200,000 I owe you. Right? Now you have another note. The bank has this other note. They've got the mortgage note, right, which they're supposed to then give back to you, right, because they no longer have a right to claim on it, right? The same as, let's say they did, for argument's sake, come out and collect £50 a month off you on the first of the month, as you've written on the document, every month, right? They come for the very last payment. They brought the promissory note. Now you retain that note, keep hold of it, and give them the final £50. Get them to sign for it, so you've got a receipt, and that's the deal done, right? This is your £200,000 note now, and you could give that to somebody else and say, here's £200,000, right? You can come every month and collect on it. To see what I mean? So it's, you create the money into existence. All of this money is created by the people, which is why you have inflation. It superinflates, because the more mortgages and loans and credit agreements they give out, the more money they're creating, which waters down the value of the rest of the money. And why would a company, a financial institution, buy your promissory note? For fractional reserve banking. Right? Fractional reserve banking states that they only have to hold 10% of what they actually lend out. So they can lend out, if you give them, let's say, a £1,000 note, they can hold that as security and lend out, create themselves, right, another £9,000, right, in loans and stuff like that, using your £1,000 as the 10% security deposit for it, right? It's called fractional reserve banking. That's what it is, right? They can lend 9 times that amount. So now they've got people paying them back. They've got £9,000 plus that £1,000. They, you know, suddenly the £1,000 that you created, they've turned into £10,000, right? And they can use that as collateral, right? Security to lend out another £90,000. Right? And then when they get that back, they now have £100,000. They can lend out £900,000. And it goes on and on and on, right? Until money eventually becomes completely worthless, right? Which is why sometime in the very near future, certainly I'm sure before 2030, we're going to have the global financial crash, the big boom, right? Where all money is going to be worthless. They will leave you for about 24 hours, right? Panicking, feeding you breaking news, this, breaking news, that. You know, PM to make an announcement at 5 PM to the nation as to what they're going to do. They pre-plan this already, right? So then what they'll do, they'll leave you for 24 hours. They won't leave you for much longer than that, because it's a well-known fact that if you leave the people without, let's say there was a power cut, right? And people now, they can't shop, they can't get access to their bank, they've got nothing, right? It takes just 3 days for society to go over the tipping point of being able to control them and bring them back again into a coherent society. Just 3 days it takes. You get, by the second day, you'll have looting. By the third day, you will have all our people killing each other for toilet rolls, you know, again. So what they'll do is after 24 hours, they'll say, don't worry, everyone, we've got this, right? We've been working on this before, just in case this happened, you know, aren't we good, right? It's called central bank digital currency. It's called the brick coin, right? All of you now have been given a downloadable wallet. Go online, put in your details. Yeah, you'll get a wallet and you can start spending straight away. And I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to put let's say £5,000 in everybody's digital wallet, right? And people will go, oh, thank God for that. Thank God for that. Even the most ardent people who are against digital currency, if their kids are starving, they've got no way of accessing their bank account, getting money or food, right, or services or whatever, they will cave in. They will cave in and they will say, and the majority, all they need, the reason they'll give you a financial boost to start with is to get you out there spending it. Because once you get used to spending it, it'll just be like using a debit card, to people. It'll just be like, beep, yeah, done. Oh, it's no different really, is it? But yeah, it's very different. It's programmable. No, listen, it's already going to happen.
No, it's not. It's not.
It's going to happen, but let me tell you something. This is where I'll definitely come to you in a sec, mate. Sorry, save your arm. We are an incredible species, okay? An incredible species, and no matter what they come at us with, right, we will find a way around it, okay? We will always find a way around it. Yeah? Every empire falls at the end of the day, and humanity always wins, right? So we will always find a way through, no matter what they put at us. We will find a way around it. We will come up with things like our own currency, right? Silver and gold, or even make our own little promissory notes like they did in Lewis, in East Sussex. They've got the Lewis pound, right? And it was created by the local authority there to try and get local businesses, being used more than corporate, big corporate entities. So your local builder would accept the Lewis pound, and he could use it in the local Lewis shops and that kind of thing, right? So it's a local area kind of thing. People will come up with their own methods in their own community and go, well, let's make these notes, let's make them quite secure, and we'll just spend amongst ourselves. Yeah, I'll pay you.
Cash, if we all keep paying with cash, why can't we just keep circulating the cash in front of ourselves?
It'll have no value. Now, and this is the thing, a lot of people say, oh, use cash because...
We've all got it though, still.
Yeah, but...
We can change it with each other.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, you could do.
I give you a carrot and you give me a carrot back. What's the difference?
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. So we've got all this cash. It's worthless in the big scheme of things, right? But we can use it as, amongst ourselves. You could have a community. You could say everybody in this room is going to use this.
Yeah, but a £50 note stays a £50 note if it's in circulation amongst us. It doesn't change. It only changes when it goes.
You attribute the value to it, right? You attribute the value to it. I'll tell you what a good alternative is has anybody heard of Aurum notes? No. Right. So Aurum notes, I have a few at home. I think I've got about 4 of them at home that were given to me years ago. Well, what they are is they look like banknotes almost, right? But they're made of gold, like gold leaf, right? Coated in plastic. So there's just like a bit of money, just like cash, right? But it's actual gold, right? And there'll be like, you can have, £1 worth of gold, or £10 worth of gold, £20 worth of gold. People will start doing things like that. They will have these. So when you spend them, they're not based on faith. They're based on the gold content, and they hold their value. And they can be traded anywhere. They're not just traded on faith with other people. They're a precious metal. So there's alternatives like that can be exploited. Whatever method we use, right, however we come to it, we will find a way around it. We always do, and we always will do, because of the way our brains are designed to be self-preserving. Okay, you will always come up with a method. This is how I come up with methods for people when they come to me and say, Davey, I've got this problem. I got a letter through the post saying this. What I do is I just jump into their head, right, and pretend I'm them, right? And then I ask myself, I've got this problem, I've got this letter, what do I do? And my brain just goes, no worries, I'll come back with the answer in a few seconds, right? And it will come back and go, right, here's how you could get out of it. Here's a way around it. Yeah, there's a loophole there, and there's this and there's that you can use. And so I'll come up with the method, right? As if it's to protect myself, and then I can just relay that on to the person. So I always say to people, this is what I would do, right? I would do this and I would do that. And that way it also legally protects me, because I'm not giving legal advice without a correct qualification, without taking a bar exam, right? So I'm allowed to give my opinion on what I would do in those set of circumstances. And if I lived in a house that I owned, yeah, and I had a nice flash car outside worth 20 grand, yeah.
My question, actually.
Go for it.
I'll ask you, so what would you do then if an enforcement agent turns up with his fake liability order and takes your car off the driveway?
How has he taken your car off your driveway?
He's lifted it. He's come on.
So you let him take it off your driveway?
There's no gate on the end. He's just really,
But you let him take it off the
whether I
driveway?
was there or not, he may have just taken it while I was out. The car's gone.
But what I'm saying is you let him take it.
You were what you meant to do? If you're
Well, there's many things you could do, right? What, you could secure the vehicle somehow with a chain. You could have like a thing attached to your wall that your chain goes through. You could wrap it through the towing loop at the back. Yeah. You could do that, for example. Now it can't be moved. If you're there, you could sit in the car. No, they can't cut it. No, they can't. No, they can't cut it. They can't cut it. That's criminal damage. They can't cause criminal damage to the property.
It's actually been lifted. You got the note through the door. We're taking the car. Gone.
Right, then you have to take them to court and sue them for the value of the vehicle, and you can charge them for the taxi fares that it's cost you, or the hire car. No, you just, you would do it through that, but then you would do it through the small claims process, right, through the county court. It will obviously go there because that's a data processing, application processing centre, basically. But you will be, if it's going to be disputed by them, right, so if they will be informed, yeah, the council or the bailiffs or whoever will be informed and given a copy by the court that there's an active claim, right? And if they don't rebut it, yeah, and submit to the court the correct documentation, then you will get a default county court judgment in your favour. If they don't appeal it, you can then follow that through and use another enforcement agents or yourself to go to their enforcement agents that you've sued and take their van, take their vehicles, take their property, take their computers, the chairs, the desks, whatever you want, because you'll have the authority to do so, because you will actually do it properly. It will cost you a bit, right? But you will actually do it properly rather than doing it on a bulk scale like they do, where it costs them pennies rather than, So, yeah, you know, if you're there and they're threatening to take it, sit in your car, lock the doors, right? Get some sunglasses and earphones, right? And that's to cut off all lines of communication. What's the point of them standing there, pointing at you, shouting at you, if you can't see them or hear them, right? So even if you can see or hear them, make out you can't. You put on the sunglasses, they can't make eye contact with you, right? So they can't make visual contact. There's no point in them shouting at you because you've got headphones or earphones in, right? So you've basically made them powerless. That vehicle now, under the law, can't be lifted because you're in it, because nobody can be in the vehicle if and when it's lifted. And therefore, the recovery driver who is called out to come and lift it will refuse to take it while there's somebody in it. Now, what they'll do is they'll call the police, and the police will turn up and say, if you don't, we're going to break the window, we're going to arrest you. That's when you go, Section 26, Criminal Justice and Courts Act 2015, upon which subsection 4 provides that a police constable, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, have a copy of it in the car, put it in the window, put it on the dashboard or whatever, and just let them know this is a civil matter. You are trespassing on my private property. Please leave the property. Yeah. If they smash the window, because it has happened before, right? If they smash the window and arrest you or whatever, or get you out of the vehicle and the vehicle's taken, whatever, you can now not only sue the enforcement agents, you can also sue the police, and you can also technically sue the recovery driver.
My next speeding ticket, how do I get away with it?
Right. Your next speeding ticket, you'll get a notice of intended prosecution through the post.
That'd be a police letter, wouldn't it?
That'll be the letter saying, please give us the driver details. You've got 28 days to do so. Right. Now, what if you didn't receive that? What if you didn't receive that?
I'll come knocking, wouldn't I?
Now, if you didn't receive that, right, and I'm saying if you didn't receive that, right, how are they going to be able to prove that it was served within 14 days of the alleged offence as per Section 1B of the Road Traffic Offenders Act 1988? They can't. They've got no record to say that it was posted and delivered. All they've got is a note on their system that says it was issued on this date, right? And then what you do is you go to court, and I've had loads of cases like this, right? Loads of successes with this, especially with this, where if you haven't received it, and by not receiving it, I'm saying don't receive it and then log into to their system to look at the images of your vehicle, because now you've just confirmed it was delivered, right? So if you didn't receive it, then you then wait, you'll get a reminder after the 14 days, right? And at that point, or any point, you could ignore that if you wanted to, that one, and wait till they go for an SJP, Single Justice Procedure Notice, to take you to court, and require you to plead guilty or not guilty to 2 offences. One will be the speeding offence, like an SP30 if you were doing 40 and a 30. And the other one will be Section 172 of the Road Traffic Act 1988, which is failure to provide driver details within the 28 days, right?
Doesn't that carry a maximum fine of £5,000?
No, it carries so the fines are worked out on what is called a standard scale, right? So it's not a fixed fine. It's based on your earning level and your income and outgoings, right? So 2 people committing the same offence, one might be a millionaire, who gets fined £100,000 for doing 35 in a 30. The other one's on universal credit, gets £100 fine. So it kind of works like that. It's known as the standard scale, right? So, aggravated trespass, for example. So if enforcement agents refuse to leave, you try to remove them and they resist you, they're now committing aggravated trespass, which is an offence that can carry up to 3 months imprisonment, or a fine no greater than level 4 on the standard scale, right? That's the wording of it. Now that means, I think level 4 is worked on the basis of about a £2,500 roughly. If you were earning a certain amount, that would be the standard. But if you're earning more, you pay more. If you earn less, you pay less. It's a bit like, do you remember, was it Ant from Ant and Dec? He was done for drink driving. He got something like an £80,000 fine. And people say, bloody hell, that's excessive, isn't it? But it's because it's worked out on the standard scale, as they call it, right? So it's not a set amount. But the thing with that, when you're being done for speeding and the Section 172, you're being done as 2 separate people, right? The speeding one, guarantee when it gets to court, will be dropped immediately because that's against the driver, and they haven't ascertained who the driver was. So they can't prosecute you as the driver because you haven't admitted to being the driver. But that only comes with a 3-point penalty and a fine, right? The failure to provide driver details, Section 172, Road Traffic Act 1988, comes with 6 points and a heftier fine, right? And that's because they consider that you're being disrespectful to the legal system, right, by refusing to provide those details. Now, it states within subsection 4 of section 172 that a person is not guilty of an offence if they are unable to provide driver details using reasonable diligence. So you're expected to use reasonable diligence. That's why they're only given 14 days in which to serve the notice of intended prosecution. Now it says serve, not issue, which means that when they issue it and post it to you, they have to do it in a timely manner so that you would receive it for sure within the 14 days, right? Which is why normally when you get them, it's normally about 3 or 4 days after the offence, right? It normally automatically comes through the post. But if you didn't receive it, right? Well, you said that, I didn't, on camera. But if you didn't receive it, right, then when they come back to you and go, you need to, you play ignorance. You say, well, I didn't receive it. Can you prove to me that it was posted by Royal Mail First Class? Yeah. Because they don't use a recorded service, right? So there's no tracking number or anything that they can check. They just, as long as, so it's not stated in law, but it's deemed accepted by the courts for them to use Royal Mail First Class postage, right? They can't send it second class, has to be first class, because the legal system deems that it is a reliable enough service, right, that you should receive the letter within a couple of days or so. Now, try telling that to my neighbour yesterday who delivered a letter to me that was misdelivered to her. Doesn't always get to you. But in that situation, you see, if they say, oh, we can prove that we sent it, then all you have to do is say, yeah, but it was misdelivered to my neighbour, right? So I didn't receive it until the 15th day. Yeah, I didn't receive it until day 15 since the alleged offence because they were on holiday at the time. Yeah, and when they came back, they brought that to me and said, oh, we found one of your letters, right? Now they're going to give you a statement in court to say, yeah, no, it was misdelivered to us, so therefore it wasn't served correctly as per the Road Traffic Offenders Act. Section 1B. Okay, so loads of people I've been advising about this, and I've had at least half a dozen in the past year successes.
There's a video on our website and on our YouTube channel that says about it. It's a speed.
It's called hypothetical speeding offence, right? Where, because that's another thing. You see, a lot of people come to me, they've done it wrong, right? And for example, they logged in to, they saw this, the letter and it says, log in here to see the images. Curiosity killed the cat. They logged in. Now they've got confirmation. That's why they do that. Yeah, it's clever because if you get one from a parking company, it will be printed on the letter. You'll see the images of your vehicle, one from a distance and one zoomed into the number plate, right, to show this is your vehicle. That's easy to deal with because all you say with them is, okay, that might be my vehicle. So why you send that to me? I'm the registered keeper. Who's the driver? And they go, well, we're assuming you're the driver. Well, you shouldn't make that assumption.
It's the same with the speeding though, isn't it? Because I mean, you've got to identify who's driving that car.
Well, that's a secondary thing, right? So that's why they put it upon the, that's why they got the section 172 to put it, the responsibility upon the registered keeper to name the driver. Well, if you don't know, then you would have to argue that in court. There was a case that I was helping with recently, where the guy had a moped, a little moped, and he was abroad with his girlfriend and he had lodgers in the house, right? 2 lodgers in the house. The keys to the bike were there. The bike was obviously around the back in the garden. And when he got back from holiday, he'd been away for, I think, a few weeks. He got back and there was a letter saying you were seen riding in this area, blah, 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 right? So he said, well, it couldn't have been me. Yeah, and nobody's fessing up to using it, the 2 people that were there, to using it. So he used that as his defence in court, and he could prove that he was out of the country, which meant the case was discontinued, right? If they can't prove, if once they know, and this will happen, if you said, I didn't receive the NIP, right? So, and now you're out of time, 14 days has passed, right? There's a reason there's 14 days, and that's because you are expected to be able to remember back as far as a couple of weeks at a push, right? Or you could calculate or work out who used the car on that day. But after that, your memory starts to fade, and you can say, I don't know who was driving my car 3 weeks ago because my brother uses my car. In the hypothetical speeding offence video I made, I created a hypothetical situation saying, I live in Haywards Heath, my brother lives in Crawley, right? Connecting the 2 towns, you've got the A23, major arterial route from London to Brighton, right? The A23. My brother, one day, he wants me to pick him up and bring him over my place. He's going to spend the weekend at mine, right? So I say, okay, I go and pick him up. I don't know what time it was sometime in the morning, right? I go and pick him up. I bring him back. As we're almost back, right, like only a few roads away, he says to me, oh, damn, I've left my phone. I need to go and get my phone. And I say to him, okay, do you want me to turn around and we'll go back and we'll get it all the way back to Crawley? And he says to me, as I say, this is all hypothetical, but he says to me, no, it's fine. Go back to your place. You go and do what you got to do. If you lend me your car, I'll go back and get it and save both of us having to go back, right? So I say, yeah, okay, then no worries. He's insured to drive other vehicles. That's fine, right? So he used the road and I used the same road within about 45 minutes of each other, right? Which one of us was it? Well, don't know. Neither of us know. So I'm now asking the court or the prosecutor to say, well, there's this situation. I just need to see an image, a clear image from the front without the glare of the sun on the windscreen, a very poor quality, almost like a silhouette I can see. I can't. The reason in that hypothetical I've used my brother is because he's roughly the same build as me, would be expect. So even if they had a clear image and said, well, that's definitely you, I could say, well, that could also be my brother. It's not that clear. It's not in super 8K, ultra 8K. It's some grainy image driving at 80 mile an hour on a 70 mile an hour stretch, right? With the sun glaring. You're not going to get proof beyond reasonable doubt, right? So you can use that as an argument in court and say, well, both of us used it, the vehicle. We don't know what time it was because we weren't clock watching, right? We just know it was in the morning. But if it was me, I don't want my brother to get points and a fine. And if it was my brother, he doesn't want me to get points and a fine. So just show me the evidence and so I can go, oh yeah, that's definitely him, or that's definitely me. Of course, I'm not going to do that, but, that would be an out. But if you get to that stage, it's because you haven't argued the NIP not turning up in line with Section 1B of the Road Traffic Offenders Act, right? Because when that's been put to them, right, all of the cases I've helped with, so there's been, I think, 5 were for speeding, 1 was for driving in a red X lane on a motorway, right? Because he didn't get over to the other side quick enough. And all of them were discontinued on the grounds that they were requiring proof of serving of the NIP, right? So that does work, right? But you've got to claim you didn't receive it, right?
We claimed my daughter had this, and we claimed that we didn't receive the first one, and it went on and on. And long story short, they withdrew the speeding fine because she didn't know whether it was her or her husband driving.
They do that.
At Thetford, but they didn't know who was driving by then because they were taking turns coming back from a long journey. But they did her for, again, withholding not providing the driver's evidence,
Section
even though they had all
172.
the bloody information anyway. But also, they add on now a victim
Surcharge.
fee or surcharge.
It's called victim surcharge.
And I wrote back and said, who's the victim?
Right, so the victim surcharge fund is a fund that anybody who is found guilty pays into, okay? And it's for victim of any crime, okay? So it doesn't mean there's a victim in your case. It just means that
You're helping all these.
Anybody who's guilty is funding the victim support fund for victims of crime, right?
And they took that, it was just over £1,000, and they took that out of her salary.
Yeah.
So you're all right with all of this if you are self-employed.
Right. Had she have disputed not receiving the NIP within 14 days, as per Section 1B of Road Traffic Offenders Act, as I said, right, and asked them to prove that it was served within 14 days, they would have discontinued that case before it went to court. When it goes to court and you haven't named the driver, automatically the speeding one gets dropped, right? That happens in every single case, right? And that's because they're trying to bring the driver to court for that, but nobody's been named as the driver, so they've got nobody to prosecute on it. They can't assume the registered keeper is the driver, okay? So instead, they go after the registered keeper for not naming the driver, which is why the registered keeper gets more of a punishment, right, than the person who actually done the speeding, if they're two different people, right? Because essentially they've got off of that because of you. Do you see what I mean? That's how
the registered keeper is a trust, i.e. not a straw man or woman, then what? Because there is no...
So if the registered keeper is the trust, right, then the trustee would be required to provide the driver details. And if it's a case of, with a trust, what you could, as I say, always argue the serving of the thing within 14 days, right? Because then you don't have any other arguments. Doesn't matter. Even if it was you speeding, right? They can't prove that. Therefore, but you need to focus on getting them to prove that it was correctly served. Because if it wasn't served within 14 days, then there is no case to answer. There is a set time limit of 14 days from the day of the alleged offence.
So they couldn't even so they couldn't have taken, so that the speeding was withdrawn. So but by doing that the earlier, as you just said, they couldn't take then the extra money that they said for not providing the driver's stick.
That should have been found not guilty. Should have been found not guilty.
The whole thing.
Yeah. The whole thing rests upon whether the NIP was served, right? It's different if you're pulled over at the side of the road because the NIP is considered served at the time of being pulled over. But in most cases, these are fixed cameras or mobile cameras or whatever that you receive a letter through the post, the notice of intended prosecution, right? But as I say, if you didn't receive it, right, and then you're questioning as to, as soon as you put to them, right, before it gets to court, you put in same thing. Anything where they're contacting you through the post, right, they've got 14 days. If they don't got you with a speed gun, then jumped in their car and sped off and pulled you over, right, the NIP is irrelevant. Okay, because they don't need to serve, because it's deemed to be, because the purpose of the NIP is to identify the driver. The police officer can identify the driver, so there's no need for an NIP, right? But when you get something through the post that says speeding, you're caught on a speed camera, whether it's, you know, the speed gun or a mobile camera up on a bridge or a static camera, fixed camera, they will come through the post. Yeah. And if you say, well, what? I didn't, don't know what happened to it. Can you show me the evidence? Yeah. Show me the evidence that it was posted. Well, it's got written on our system. You see, if you went to court and they said, well, you know, it was, according to our record, it was issued on the, you know, 1st of September 2025, which was 3 days after the alleged offence. Then you go, okay, can you prove that? Have you got a receipt that it was posted? They're like, no, it says it on the screen. Okay, so that's hearsay, isn't it? That's not evidence. That's just somebody saying, oh yeah, we issued it. How do we know it come out of the franking machine and didn't get shredded or, you know?
My friend got caught doing 175 1 hour on the speed camera. He owned the company, so after you sent a letter to the company, so he denied you before. But took the £5,000 fine.
Yeah. Presumably your I didn't receive it doesn't really work after the 5th speeding ticket and the 6th speeding ticket. Maybe it might work on the 1st. It'll work on anyone whatsoever, even the 20th. And it's down to them, right? If they think, hang on a minute, she's taking the piss here. Yeah. We've sent her 6 in the last 6 weeks. Yeah. And she's claiming she didn't receive any. Right. What they'll do then is they'll send it recorded delivery. Right. So if you do persist and do it often, yeah, they'll get around it by either serving it by hand, i.e. turning up and giving it to you just to make their point, and so you can't use that defence in future. But you have to think that these are done on such a massive scale, bulk processing, right, that it saves them millions and millions and millions of pounds over time, right, with the not having to pay the extra for a tracked service. Yeah, they just pay the cheapest. Sorry, go on.
Parking, private parking, well, NHS car park, didn't park in the bay but parked out the way. I'm going to be late for the appointment. I put all my notices on the car, and I said to the guy, I had to park there because I'm going to be late. And he goes, you can't, you need to park in the bay. And I said, well, I've got notices. And I said, does anyone come around and issue tickets? And they went, no. Literally, I was inside, in and out within 7 minutes. Came out, and there was a guy actually taking pictures of my car, but I only saw him take it of the notices. Yeah. And then this arrived. They were £100. But I've got it on recording when I said to the guy, he goes, well, it says on the notice. I said, well, I'm dyslexic, I can't read. So what do I meant to do? And it doesn't say no parking or anything. And I said, and also, when I asked the other guy, he said that there's nobody around. I said, where's my ticket? He goes, it's in the post. I said, what, you've already gone to the post office and posted my ticket? I said, a fixed camera can take a picture and send it to me. But if you're a human being and you're taking pictures, you have to place the ticket on the car or physically give it to me. And he goes, no, I don't. Where do I stand on that?
Well, first of all, I recommend you don't stand there and argue with them. Yeah, there's no point. Yeah. Right? They're going to do what they're going to do. If they haven't put the ticket on the vehicle yet, get in your car and drive off.
He's already taken the picture. And
okay, he's already taken the picture. Yeah. So what you do is you do nothing. You wait till that letter comes through, and you respond to that letter saying, can you tell me who the driver was, please? Because only the driver established the contract. So the sign that's up there with the parking charges and all that sort of stuff, that's known as a tacit consent contract, TACIT, right? Tacit consent contract. That means essentially you consent by your actions. If you park here, you agree to pay this, right? I parked there, so I've agreed to pay it, right? That's only liable for the driver, not the registered keeper. right? So when they contact you, they're contacting the registered keeper because they're getting the registered keeper's details. So what you do is you separate yourself from the driver. Because it's a civil matter, you are not required under Section 172 of the Road Traffic Act to provide driver details, right? It's nothing to do with the Road Traffic Act, okay? So because of that, it's incumbent upon them to prove who the driver was who agreed to those terms and conditions. They can't assume it's the registered keeper. And in fact, if you go on to, they'll tell you this blatantly, if you go on to YouTube, right, and type in watchdog parking tickets.
Anne Robinson, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. She's there with the solicitor who deals with all this sort of stuff. And he said that there is no way they can actually take action against you as the registered keeper, right? Because it's incumbent upon them to prove who the driver was. And Anne Robinson, it's only like a 2-minute clip. It's worth watching. Anne Robinson said, so what would you recommend people do if they received it? And he said, well, if my mother received one of these, I'd tell her to do make one of these with it. And it was a paper aeroplane. And then he said, and then I'd tell her to just do that. And it flew across the studio.
Because he'd taken a picture of the actual notices, I saw him zoom in and he took the picture of the notices. There, and it does state, if you take any pictures, it's XYZ fee.
So now they owe you money,
yeah,
and
so
you can put, yeah,
I don't agree to your terms and conditions.
exactly. They've agreed by putting. I've got a notice which you can download from the Peace Officer's website and put in your vehicle. I've got an A6 size notice where the old tax disc used to be. I parked in. So I took my boy to school. As I say, I live right next to the main high street called South Road in Haywards Heath. My road comes off of the high street. So as I'm on my way back from dropping my boy at school, right, drove back through the main high street, and I parked outside Boots opposite Greg's to go into Greg's and get a bacon roll, right? I could see about 30 or 40 yards up the road there, probably not even that far, at the bus stop was the civil enforcement officer, right? And I thought, oh, this will be interesting. So I got out, I went over the road. As I say, I'm parked on double yellows, but I've got my little notice in the window. And I've really been wanting one of them to put a ticket on my car, because as soon as they do, they owe me 250 quid. Right, plus any expenses and whatever on top. So I'm in the queue in Greg's, right, and I'm watching, turned around, looking out the window, right, directly opposite of my car, and I could see him come along to the car. He bent down like that, he read the notice, and then he turned around and walked off.
What was the notice in the car that you saw?
It's so you can get it. It's titled "Important Notice" in red ink, and then it's got. I can't remember the exact text, but if you go on to resources on peaceofficers.uk or on the shop,
The window stickers on the shop.
yeah, you can either download it and print it out yourself for free, or you can order like laminated versions or whatever.
Special window sticker. It's,
Yeah, I think we got another one which is a window sticker one as well.
I can charge them now for taking a picture.
Yeah, they've agreed.
They've agreed by taking a picture, they're now in contract with me.
Yeah, they not reading the notice properly or not understanding it properly comes down to ignorance in law is no defence in law, right? So if they put a ticket on your car and it says that you can't put a ticket on if you put a ticket on my car,
They're meant to put a ticket. If you're an actual human being taking photos, aren't they meant to put a ticket on the car? They can't just take a photo and then go, because therefore we don't know. Like, you can see the camera up there. I paid my ticket, but I just didn't pay in the bay. I didn't park in the bay, so I parked on the side. So I know, I think it's if it's a traffic warden, they have to physically put a ticket and take the picture that they've put the ticket on.
to show it's been served.
He didn't. He just said, I've taken a picture and I was in the post. it's got to be served in one way or the other, either by camera or by a human being physically.
Yeah, but they've got no details of the driver whatsoever, so therefore there's nobody that they can go after. They've made an assumption that the registered keeper is the driver, but the assumptions are not acceptable in court.
Yeah, I know they've said on this one, it says you can't, you have to give the details, you can't say you don't know who it is under the Freedom Act 2012. Oh, it's just over.
Mine all get filed by ripping it in half, popping it straight in the bin, and then they get ignored after that. Yeah,
Just as an
yeah, all of them.
though, I got speeding fine. Not, I think it was the year before last, and it was saying that I was at Luton Airport in my car, and that at that particular time I was having my hair done in Church Langley, and they got my registration plate wrong.
There's one lady in Riggers on the road, isn't there?
They did that with my dad once. They got one letter wrong, and he never received anything through the post.
And my sister's friend, who's a criminal lawyer, he did on the side advise, take your number plates off your car on your driveway, take a photo, then report it to the police that your number plates have been stolen. You get a crime reference number, so every time you get a speeding ticket, say, sorry, I've got a crime reference number, my number plates were stolen, it's duplicate. So that's one way.
Right, the only trouble with that, right, is you're going to create a rod for your own back, right, because there's going to be a crime report of stolen number plates. So one day you're going to the shop and 6 police cars box you in and drag you out the car, accusing you of a stolen cloned vehicle. So I wouldn't, yeah, but you've got to go through that, you know. So what I say is, if you get an NIP, if you don't get an NIP through the post, right, you can't respond to it, and therefore after 14 days you're not expected to recall who was, it comes purely down to, can you prove that it was served? If you can't, there's no case to answer. When it comes to things like this, with the civil matter, you don't even have to bother responding. You don't even have to bother responding. They can't take you to court because they can only take the driver to court, not the registered keeper. And that's what they tell you in this clip on Watchdog. He says it's never gone to court, right? Because they can't take it to court, because they have to have a reasonable, to take someone to court, you have to be deemed to have a reasonable prospect of success, right? And you have to have explored every possible avenue for resolution before going to court. Court should be a last resort, right? So what I would recommend you do is, instead of applying to the court, just contact them and say, thank you for your letter dated blah, 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 right? Whenever it was, get ChatGPT to write it out technically. However, due to the fact that there was a notice in my vehicle that states that no images can be taken. I mean, I don't know whether that would stand up, taking photos, because anybody can photograph in a public place, right? So
yeah, but it was for the reason of gaining financial gain from me.
yeah, what you can say is that you have a notice on the vehicle which forbids unless you agree to pay this money. As the images have now been taken, this money has now become due, and you expect full payment within 30 days, or I would say 28 days, and you will give them a 50% reduction if they pay within 14 days. Because that's what they do to you. Yeah. So use it back on them, right? So that's how you would follow that through. Personally, what I do is I get it through the post. It says, ULEZ or Dart Charge or whatever. I come through the Dartford Tunnel. I'll be going back through the Dartford Tunnel or over the bridge. And I won't pay a penny, right? I get the letter, I open it, and it says Dart Charge, ripped in half, straight in the bin. nothing they can do about it. They can't prove who the driver was. They sent it to the registered keeper, not the driver, right? So I've had loads of these over the last few years. I've had loads of them, and not one of them has come to anything whatsoever, right? It's only when they'll keep sending me letters every so often, right? And again, they just get ripped in half. And the reason I don't shred it into tiny pieces, right, is because I don't need to. I only need to make sure it can't be fished out and used as ID. So if you rip it in half, it can't be fished out and used as ID. Yeah, because no respectable organisation, a bank or a financial services, whatever, would accept that a ripped in half letter as identification, right? So I've done the bare minimum to stop my ID being stolen or used as identification, but I refuse to give them more energy than they deserve, right? So the way I see it, all these people they're energy thieves. They're after my energy, right? They want me to do this. This is why you said about the 3-letter process, the knock letters, notice of conditional acceptance. I never bother with them, right? Because you think about it, right? You've got to type out a letter, right? Then you've got to print that letter. Then you've got to find an envelope. You've got to go to the post office. You've got to post that letter.
You go to the post office, I use the special delivery stickers and just stick them in any post box.
Yeah.
And it tracks it. You can
Oh,
track
even
it.
just a normal stamp.
You put a stamp on, just use
You
special
just
delivery.
And it's still
print
delivered.
it up.
And it gets tracked as well. Because the postman, when he collects it, he scans them and then you can track it.
So you do that.
I sent a tea bag up north to my sister.
so send the tea bag. Right. So the thing about yeah, I'm just gonna.
No, honestly, it's absolutely amazing. I could stay on listening to you for hours, but we'd love to invite you back.
Can you tell She-Bear that? Because she's always having a go at me.
Honestly, it's been amazing. So we've done one I think school night, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, no worries. So let's wind it up. Thank you, everyone.